Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 149, almost a milestone, Dave. That's PEP or Planet Extra podcast.
I was wondering this morning how far off we were from 150.
We are 1 week away.
Wow.
PEP is an offshoot of Planet America on the ABC Australia, which you can see on Friday, 8 p.m. on ABC News Channel and Wednesdays at 9:53 for the next little while, and on iView on Facebook at ABC Planet America and on YouTube at the ABC In-Depth channel. That's a long breath. I'm Pep. We cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. We're recording this right now at 2:23 p.m. in Sydney on a Friday. I stopped reading at 2 a.m.
Yep.
So now you know what I don't know about. But Dave didn't stop. Dave just kept on going. I'm going to ask Dave for the latest breaking news in a second, but let me finish the blurb. If you're listening, you can also see this podcast on Facebook and YouTube, where you will see someone who never raised the stakes on inconsequential views, Dr. Dave, Dr. Pepper himself.
That's right.
Dave Smith.
And I am an offshoot of the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. But when I do PEP, I'm a free-floating offshoot. I am not attached to anything or anyone, but I'm very attached to doing PEP. I'm very attached to giving my views, but these are my views only.
You're like Monkey Magic on his little pink cloud.
That's right.
That's what you are.
That's right.
We're on the clock today because I'm going to put Eric Wilson's second part at the end of this, when then that goes for an hour. So we have a 2-hour limit because of the 3-hour limit for the entire podcast.
Okay.
So let's go. As I said, you have some late breaking news I know nothing about.
I do.
So tell me.
That is that Judge Aileen Cannon has just rejected an argument that Trump's lawyers were making in Florida, which was that the Espionage Act, which, by the way, dates back to 1918, it's World War I era legislation, is too vaguely worded to be used against Trump in this documents handling case.
So does that mean they can only charge him with obstruction? Is that what that means?
That was probably what they're arguing, but Aileen Cannon has thrown that argument out.
Oh, I see.
And when they were presenting it yesterday, she seemed very skeptical of it. This is a piece of legislation that's been around for more than 100 years. She said it would be extraordinary to just rule it unconstitutional. Now, having said that, the Espionage Act is a pretty awful piece of legislation.
It is,
I think. And
ask Julian Assange, he'll tell you.
Yeah. I mean, the very worst bits of it were taken out. Like it used to be so much worse. In World War I, it was used for all kinds of things. But they actually made it even worse immediately after World War I, like after the national security threat was gone. So it was illegal, for example, to do anything which might interfere with the recruitment of soldiers to the US military, which meant if you were handing out pamphlets against the war or against the draft, bang, you're going to get arrested under the Espionage Act and you could be going to jail for 20 years. Wow. A group which I was studying in my dissertation, the Bible students, who later became known as Jehovah's Witnesses, all of their leaders got sentenced to 20 years prison under the Espionage Act for saying that the United States should stay out of the war. And the federal judge in Brooklyn who sentenced them said they could not have done more damage if they had gone off and joined the German army. And, their lawyers had pointed out, this is a religious group. They're talking about their sincere religious commitments. And he said, that makes it worse.
That makes it worse.
That makes it worse. Because if they're sincere, then, well, there's no stopping someone who's sincere. Like, they're crazy.
Okay.
So the Espionage Act has been used for some pretty bad stuff over the... Now, it was also that in that real sort of heyday of it, doing anything to the flag was also offending the flag in any way. Now, a lot of that got repealed in, I think, 1921 or 1922.
Are you saying the flag's a snowflake? Is that what you're saying?
But anyway, I am no fan of the Espionage Act, is what I'm saying. But my problems with it are not that it's too vaguely worded.
Sure.
Yeah.
It sounds like one more thing to hate Woodrow Wilson about.
That's right, yes. Yeah, no, it really is. Like, this was a product of one of the most authoritarian presidents in US history during one of the most authoritarian moments of US history. Yep.
Well, I'm glad you shared that. We should get back to normal programming, though. Grateful for. We missed that.
Yeah.
Are you grateful for anything? Are you grateful for the Espionage Act? Is there something else you're grateful for?
Look, I am grateful for the New York Times Games package.
Are you doing Connections?
Yes.
Oh, it's so good.
I'm
love addicted to Connections.
Connections. And my favourite moment is always just the moment that I open it for the first time.
Yes.
And I see that completely unorganised field of words.
Love it.
And when I start to solve it, it's actually kind of disappointing. Like
it does often end up easier than you think it's going to.
It does, yes, yeah.
You're right. That first few minutes.
Yes, yeah. My favourite thing, and I've only ever done this once, but the thrill was tremendous, was getting it out in reverse order.
Reverse order?
Getting the hardest one first, getting purple first, and then going down blue, green, yellow. Sorry, if you don't play this game, this conversation will have made absolutely...
Sorry, you should explain what Connections is.
No sense.
Yeah.
Connections is one of the New York Times stable of games that presents you with 16 words, and you've got to group them according to categories. And when you first start looking at them, you can kind of start to see some potential overlaps between words, but it's a very sneaky game because there are a lot of potentially overlapping categories, and it deliberately tricks you with some of the things that it puts in. Sometimes with this game, you've got to know some pretty obscure American slang.
Yes.
Like I think if you had a vast working knowledge of young adult novels written in America in the 50s, I think you would be in really good stead.
You should know the Greek alphabet too.
Oh yeah, today's I never ever would have got that. But anyway, so Connections is great. I do also enjoy Letterboxd. Do you play that one?
No, I don't do that. I do Wordle and I do Connections. And I also do the new one, Strands.
Oh, I've never done that one.
Which is a pilot one. You need to do that on your computer. You can't do it on your phone.
Oh, okay. I also do like Spelling Bee. And I want to say for people who are frustrated, as I often am, with the very restrictive dictionary in Spelling Bee, Letterboxd is bizarrely opposite. So in Letterboxd, you're also working to form words with a limited range of letters that whose relationships are restricted. But they work from a far, far bigger dictionary. I don't know what it is, but they've allowed me to use words which I'm pretty sure only exist in French. Like Quel, Quel. Yeah, that's fine. So anyway, I do really enjoy Tiles.
Yeah.
Tiles is a very soothing game. Yeah, so I'm very much in favour of this expansion of the New York Times games package. I did read a piece where someone said we're now basically a gaming company with a news organisation attached.
Fine by me.
It's an improvement.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I share your gratitude on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, so look up Strands. It's kind of like a word finder, except for you don't know. There's like a cryptic clue of what the category is.
Yes.
And you don't know what words are. So you're guessing what the words are.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
That sounds like something I could enjoy.
So, yeah, but the Connections is my favourite as well.
Yeah, Connections is great.
12:01 a.m. every morning. Bang. And I do a bunch of other Wordle type stuff as well, like Octordle. Is like 8 of them.
Yes,
anyway, it's great stuff. I'm grateful for a double here. Oh, my God, we just don't have the time. I'm going to try and be really fast. Number one, Carl Wallinger died this week, who was the lead singer and songwriter for World Party, a band which not a lot of people know. You have to be of a certain vintage to have heard of them, I think.
Yeah.
For those who haven't heard of World Party, pause the podcast. I'm going to put a link to this in the homework/blurb. It's a song called Ship of Fools from 1987, which was the classic end of the world song. Like in the mid to late 1980s, there are a lot of these end of the world songs.
Yeah.
They just don't make them anymore. But at the time, you had your Russian type stuff, you had nuclear war thoughts, environment type thoughts, and there was a lot of the world's about to end.
Yeah.
So, and this was an absolute classic of the genre. Ship of Fools, great song.
Well, I've got to say, it's got to be better than Russians.
Russians was definitely part of that genre.
Russians is one of the worst songs ever.
Look, when I was 8, I was pretty scared by Russians, I have to say, and I also thought geology and biology was a really cool rhyme. But I was 8. But yeah, there's also Land of Confusion by Genesis is another one of those songs.
Yep.
One of the more abstract versions of those songs is Fall On Me by R.E.M.
Okay.
That's another one of them.
Yep.
There's so many of them. There's so many of these songs in the late 80s, and they just freaked the hell out of an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old me. And but this one in particular, honestly, is a great song.
Okay.
It's a great, great song.
Yep.
So definitely, I was grateful for that song. It's also, I'm grateful for Sixth Circuit Chief Judge Jeffrey Sutton.
Okay.
And he's also known as the newly appointed chair of the U.S. Judicial Conference.
Yes.
Yeah, do you know
I know what you're talking about. I know where you're going with this. I agree.
This guy is spearheading a new policy for the Judicial Conference, and it is essentially going to stop judicial shopping.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Which is one of our least favourite things on this podcast.
We hate it. So for those who don't know what I'm referring to, the federal judiciary's got made up of 94 different districts. And normally what happens you file in a district and then you get a randomly selected judge from that district. And, you can work out there's roughly 2 per state.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be a lot of judges that you could draw from. But some districts are subdivided into divisions. Those divisions are so small, there's only one judge. So if you file in that division, you know who you're going to get. And so in some of those divisions, they have like a crackerjack type judge.
Yes.
A bit of a loon.
Yep.
Like, say, for instance, the Northern District of Texas has a guy called Matthew Kacsmaryk, who is extremely conservative. And so if you want a Looney Tunes type ruling, you go directly to Amarillo, file in there. Is this the way to Amarillo? I have a dubious lawsuit for you. And you file under Matthew Kacsmaryk, and he'll give you what you want, and you'll get your advantage for a year before it gets overturned.
Yes.
Matthew Kacsmaryk is such a freak. He gets overturned constantly by the Fifth Circuit, who gets overturned consistently by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Who is also the most conservative Supreme Court for decades,
Yes.
if not ever.
So Kacsmaryk's the one who actually tried to overturn the FAA's ruling that mifepristone is safe.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, there's so many things he's tried to overturn. He's an absolute freak.
Yeah.
But and that's been the case. The people have chosen him as their go-to guy for conservative rulings until now. From now on, any civil action that's seeking to bar or to mandate state or federal actions will be treated differently. If you just want to sue your next door neighbour, cool, go to Kacsmaryk, knock yourself out. But if you want a national injunction for, say, the pill, then you can no longer choose Kacsmaryk. What you do is you will go to the district, not the division, and you'll get a choice of 17 judges. You might get Kacsmaryk. If you're either very /lucky or unlucky, depending on who you are. But he's 1 in 17.
Yes.
And that's how it's going to be now. If you want to try and get a national injunction, which is what these guys are always trying to do. They're trying to basically get their way for 12 months, essentially. And it's it's only a small change, and the Conservatives will continue to pick the Fifth Circuit, because they'll try to appeal pick that appeals court.
Yes.
Liberals will continue to pick the Ninth Circuit because that's the most liberal appeals court.
Yes.
Sure. And they'll often get a conservative judge in the Fifth Circuit, or they'll often get a liberal judge in the Ninth Circuit. Sure. Also, we don't know if this policy change is going to stick. Normally you use Congress to do something like this. There may be a way to work around it.
Well, Mitch McConnell has already expressed his displeasure.
I bet.
At this. He is very unhappy.
Sucked in.
He has said the Judicial Conference can't do this.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll see. Maybe they can't do this, but God bless them for trying.
Yeah.
Theoretically, if this works, it will make the judicial process much less of a joke. So that's great. And look, this is only going to help. Like, if we're talking just raw politics here, when you're talking Mitch McConnell, you're talking raw politics.
You are the rawest.
The reason he's saying that is because he knows this is only going to help Biden, because every single one of those areas I described before, which allows you to select division judges rather than district judges, every single one of them is conservative. So this is only helping Biden. Only. And it's only hurting conservatives. And Jeffrey Sutton is a George W. Bush appointee who happens to be super conservative himself.
Yes.
So I'm very grateful to him for doing this.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Good on you, Jeffrey. I'm grateful to you.
So that's with 2 conservative justices we have, not given thanks for today, but him and Cannon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we have. Yes.
2 conservative justices have done good things this week.
Aren't we even-handed here? I got so many. Whenever there's the week after Bill, there's always 1,000 correspondences. Bill generates a lot of correspondence.
He does.
He's our clickbait on this podcast. Look, I don't have time to read you them all. I'm just going to read a couple of selections. For a start, I'd like that we got a lot of correspondence about Phoenix because Bill said the Phoenix was the same size as Sydney. And a lot of people said, hang on. When you Google Phoenix, there's 1.6 million people. When you Google Sydney, it's 5.2 million people. The reason I didn't correct them at the time, because I know that Sydney is a big city compared to American cities.
Yes,
So I was suspicious, but I thought, it depends how you define these things. You define it as just the city region, or you define it as the greater region? I don't know how big Greater Phoenix is.
The metropolitan area is at least 4 million.
I was going to say, when you look up Greater Phoenix population, you get 4.6 million.
That's what I was thinking,
which is a lot more comparable to Sydney.
Yes,
Sydney's 5.2
very
million.
close. The remarkable thing, though, about it is sprawled over an enormous area. Now, I don't know if in area it covers as much size as Sydney, but it is the most one-story city I've ever seen. Like, there are very few apartment buildings. There is a kind of small downtown area, but it is very, very low-rise, single-family occupancy. So it actually takes up the same amount of room as Los Angeles. And Los Angeles has 14 million people. And this is people in the middle of the desert. And there's a golf course for every man, woman, and child in Phoenix. It is the most unsustainable place you have ever seen. And this is one of the reasons why the Colorado River is kind of struggling a little bit at the moment. It's because it has to sustain these vast desert oases, and why there are conspiracy theories in the Midwest about these Southwesterners are going to come after our Great Lakes when they've drunk the Colorado dry.
If this was a Phoenix PEP, we would be grateful for the Colorado River.
We would be.
They're keeping us alive.
We would be every day.
Another area of correspondence for Bill. So much correspondence on this one. Everyone knows what I'm talking about here. Everyone who listens to this knows exactly what word I'm about to use. That word is Queen. Because Bill had to go. Another go. He backed over Queen having a go. Like when you mischievously called out for people to have a go at Bill, someone asked about Queen because Bill had said they were the most overrated band in history. Yeah. And then Bill, because he's Bill, just goes, yeah, let's go.
Yes.
And I just went for round two.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, he had to go Brian May. Tom says Brian May did eventually finish his PhD.
He did. It's true.
Yeah, and he worked on some of the New Horizons Pluto mission, some of which happened during the Christmas government shutdown.
Yeah.
But he also did a very mid-range prog rock tune in honor of the whole thing. Luckily, nerds love prog rock, and they all applauded very politely on its debut at Mission Control.
That is a fantastic piece of correspondence. Thank you for that. Yep.
Now Bill did back over his claim that Queen were one of the most overrated rock bands ever, and Rip Van Windo had this to say about that.
Yeah.
I think what Bill is saying makes sense if you consider the rated part of it, being rated as rock musicians rather than something else. Rock and roll or whatever offshoot can be popular. But being popular is not generally what gets something rated highly in terms of being rock and roll. That's associated with the sound, performance, influence, significance, and yes, the political and cultural outcomes rather than quantitative economic and social appreciation, he said. And he's referring to music critics, essentially, like Bill.
Yeah.
And it's true. Bill did focus a lot on the cultural aspects, which Edward then went on to point out. We're talking about the cultural aspects. We're talking about particularly Queen being soft cocks when it comes to gay issues and AIDS issues. Edward said, amongst many things, it's hard for Queen to publicly advocate for AIDS when your lead singer hasn't publicly disclosed it or admitted to even being gay. It's clear that Freddie didn't want to be a poster boy for AIDS/HIV.
Yes.
Which is true.
Yes.
Which is absolutely true. I've actually got an example for you guys about that, which Bill didn't, pretty much the only thing Bill didn't say about Queen. This is one that I know, but it does tie into my personal opinion on this, which I didn't express because Bill was expressing enough opinions for all of us.
Yes.
Which is back in 1983-84, for those who aren't old enough, they won't know, there was a huge time for gay culture being mainstreamed, especially in Britain.
Yeah.
Huge time. Like 1983, you have Boy George, you have Divine, you have Marilyn. That's three cross-dressing, sexually ambiguous people.
Yes.
All on the charts at the same time.
You also have, around this time, maybe 1984, Bronski Beats' Small Town Boy.
I was going to get to that.
Yeah.
Which is there was nothing. It wasn't like Village People where you go, oh, they look pretty gay, but you can't be sure.
There was nothing ambiguous about this at all. Watch the video.
Yeah, it's 100%. We are gay. We are proud. Here is a video of a guy being gay bashed, being thrown out by his parents.
Yes, yeah.
His dad's giving him the crumpled up $100 note and not shaking his hand.
Yes, yeah.
And the chorus is about running away. And being driven.
His mum seemed sorry to see him go.
Yeah, his mum wasn't happy, but she was. She let him go.
Yeah.
Anyway, as you say, nothing ambiguous. Like they were overtly gay. The song was overtly gay.
Yeah.
And there was nothing apologetic about it.
This is Planet Britain, but we always sneak in a bit of Planet Britain.
This is a bit of Planet Britain.
Yeah.
There was also The Birdcage came out then as well with Gloria Gaynor's gay anthem, I Am What I Am, which was a big song at the time as well. You had Frankie Goes to Hollywood, was basically the biggest act of 1984.
Yes, yeah.
At least in Britain. And they were overtly gay.
Yeah.
At least two of them were.
Yep.
So yeah, and you said Bronski. So this was very, and we were like 6 months away from Dead or Alive, Spin Me Round Like a Record, which was the moment when the gay high energy music, they used to call it, the gay club music became everyone's music. Like, basically dance music for the second half of the 80s was essentially just the first half of the 80s gay music.
Yeah.
It just be like that's what Stock Aitken and Waterman were. They just stole the gay music and just made it their own.
Yeah.
So this was becoming mainstream fast. In that context, you have a Queen making I Want to Break Free.
Yes.
This is the beginning of 1984.
Yeah.
A song which is, I Want to Break Free. A film clip where they're all cross-dressing.
Yes.
Right? Now, people these days think back on that like it's a gay anthem.
Yeah.
At the time, very much not, as far as Freddie Mercury and Queen was concerned.
Yes.
Freddie Mercury was saying, no, Roger wrote this. He's a guy with 4 kids.
Yes, yeah.
And it's got nothing to do with that. It's about breaking free of, domestic drudgery. And the reason we're cross-dressing is because we're just making fun of Coronation Street. We think it'd be funny.
Yes.
That's it. He stuck to that all the time, and he got a number of questions about because at that point in time it was ambiguous. Was he gay? Was he not gay?
Yeah.
And he was emphasizing that no, he's got nothing to do with that.
Yes.
So this is a situation where they accidentally happened upon a political song without meaning to.
Yes.
At the perfect time to do so.
Yeah. And
Freddie Mercury, in particular, went out of his way to just smash it down and go, no, it's got nothing to do with politics, nothing. And so that's a perfect example of what Bill's talking about.
Yes.
Them running away from even the potential for politics.
Yes, yeah.
Having said that, I reckon that, my personal view is this is a pop song. Who gives a shit? It's just a good song. And it doesn't have to have meaning.
Yeah.
Pop songs don't have to have meaning. They don't have to have cultural import.
No.
I know Bill likes it, but my view is that great, if you can do it. But importantly, people should just like your song. And they did a lot with Queen. And that's all you need to do.
I've got one little factoid about Freddie Mercury.
Go for it.
So he was born in Zanzibar.
Yes.
I have seen the house that he grew up in. So we were going on this tour of Stone Town, which is the very old part of Zanzibar City. It's an amazing place because it's this combination of Arab and Persian and Indian architecture, these narrow little streets. It's this absolute maze. You come to this point near the harbour, this house, where there are all of these British tourists hanging out and there are big pictures of Freddie Mercury up. And our tour guide started telling us, this is Freddie Mercury's house. And he unenthusiastically gave us this potted biography of Freddie Mercury. And I think that because we had been asking him a lot of questions about Zanzibar, he decided to sort of come clean with us. He said, look, I've got to admit, this is only here for the tourists. Most people in Zanzibar don't even know who Freddie Mercury is. He said Freddie Mercury was gay. Our religion and our culture is 100% against that. So the government never publicised Freddie Mercury. And this is clearly a very intelligent, educated guy. And he says to us, I never knew who Freddie Mercury was until I came to work in the tourism industry. And this is a guy who had grown up in Stone Town, in the same place, where it's not a very big place. So. Yes. So while there is this, but he said we have to have this here for the tourists. For the tourists, and there were clearly people who had come all the way to Zanzibar just to do a pilgrimage to this house. So that's my little Zanzibar factoid about Freddie Mercury.
That might explain partly his attitude as well. I was going to say just on the great songs from Queen that like, Bill didn't mention this.
Yeah.
You're My Best Friend. Like, Don't Stop Me Now. Two of my favorite songs of the 70s. There's some good songs, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't like any of them, but
that's okay.
It's all about taste.
Of course it's about taste. And I'm very poppy. But I'll just say one more thing for those who say that Queen never wrote any songs about anything, Bill. Their entire last album was about Freddie Mercury's death. Innuendo. There are so many songs on Innuendo, which is just so much about Freddie Mercury, because they record that while he was dying. And in particular, the title track, oh my God, as far as, I'm about to die songs, and there's a few of that genre where people know they're dying and they record their final tracks.
Yeah.
That Innuendo, the way that ends, after you finish listening to Super Fool's World Party, listen to the end of Innuendo, the song. My God, goosebumps. Like, it's the best I'm about to die song ever in terms of ending. It's just fantastic.
Anyway, I broadly agree with Bill. And the biopic about Queen was terrible.
I think everyone agrees on that.
Yeah, because, for fans of Queen, you'd be pissed off at the number of details that were pointlessly changed.
Yeah.
For weak dramatic effect. It's also like renownedly the worst edited movie ever made. Like, I don't think there's any shot that lasts for longer than 2 seconds. But yet, better than the Elton John biopic made by the same people. Oh, you don't watch it.
Okay.
Don't watch. I saw both of these on long plane flights.
Okay, I'll go and watch Hogs again instead.
Well, we've used our time very effectively.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I know we got to. I'll just race through a couple more correspondences and then I know.
Yeah. Look, Correspondence is one of my favorite bits.
Yeah, okay.
So yes,
on Jack Smith's timing, we talked about this. I think it was with you, or maybe it was
no, it wasn't with me.
Okay, it was with Bill. Oliver says Jack Smith could, in terms of squeezing in the case before the election, Jack Smith could slim down his case, removing some of the charges / evidence to reduce the pre-trial preparation time or length of the trial. They might be able to fit the trial in before the election if he does that. Apparently, it's called slim to win. Okay, I don't know
slim to win. Okay,
maybe I'll just throw it out there.
Thank you for that.
Corresponds to me from Wagtag. A few people have asked about this. A lot of people asked about why I've only been to America once or twice. People were confused about that.
Right. Yep.
And I've been to Japan and stuff. Why am I so obsessed with America? I haven't been. Like, basically, the only time I've been overseas is when I've been working.
Yep.
Like I recorded for various shows I've made a number of stuff overseas, and so I like in England, the Vatican, Japan. These are all places I went for work.
Yeah.
Luxembourg, Liechtenstein. And I went to America once for work. The only time I've ever taken a holiday in my life was for my honeymoon. And I went to America, of course. So I've been twice. That's why. My honeymoon was 2006, and I went for work for the war and everything in 2009 to America. And other than that, I just went to other places. But basically, I just don't take holidays. If I'm not working on Play America, I'm working on something else. So, yeah.
I also, every single time I've been to the US, it's either been for work or for when I was doing my PhD there. So, I've got to admit, I've never been there on holiday, but I have spent a lot of time there.
I do hope to go there a lot when I finish this work all the time.
Okay.
It's correspondence on inequality. Mango says, because I talked about the wealth inequality improving slightly in America in the last little while. Mango says Chaz's reliance on stats Chaz's reliance on stats as a measure of observable objective reality in regards to this issue does not tell the complete story, and in my mind does not convince me that overall conditions of wealth inequality are improving in the United States. For me, in view of extreme wealth and political power being accumulated in the hands of these foul neo-feudal barons, makes incremental movements on statistics seem like a cruel joke, a talking point that will work well in the neoliberal paradigm, but ultimately fail to achieve any meaningful change. And Paul backs it up in a slightly less wordy way, saying, Chaz, you're missing the point in inequality. There was a big dive since the 80s, a small uptick in the last 10 years, which is a fair point to make, I feel. Like I was focusing on that small uptick in the last 10 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, the point about the way that political inequality compounds with wealth inequality, in ways which means even if there is a small uptick, that you're a long way from, the the effects changing.
And Ian says, if you're wondering what's going on, it may well be about property prices, because he makes the point that the wealth of the bottom 50% of households is driven by real estate compared to a mixture of shares and real estate for higher income groups. Ozflip also makes the point with some stats. 2011 isn't much of a metric. That's when I started my stats from. 1990 isn't that long ago either, but in 1990, the bottom 50% in the USA held 37% of US wealth.
Yep.
In 2023, they held 31%. In 1990, the top 1% held 8.6%.
Yep.
In 2023, they held 14.7%. That is not an improvement. Fair enough.
Yeah. Something that I used to see a lot online was, the most popular show of around that period depicted a family with a single breadwinner doing a blue-collar job, being able to buy a house, which was The Simpsons. Now, obviously, that and on the one hand, that's not realistic. On the other hand, that was a show that was a lot closer to the reality of American life than most other sitcoms.
That's true.
Yeah, that were around, and that at least depicted a reality that a lot of people believed in then.
Fair.
Yeah.
And finally, an NRL corresponds for you. From
yes.
Kangaroo Bob.
Yep.
Dave may have me beat with political knowledge, but as an NFL diehard, I'd like to push back on his gambling take.
Okay.
There's a massive football drought between February to September. Football fans would kill for something to fill those months. If rugby or AFL made a move, then even a fraction of the millions of NFL fans would be a massive boon to either league.
Yeah, I still think the time difference is a big problem. By the way, I made a mistake when I said that there was a 14-hour difference between the East Coast and an 11-hour difference between the West Coast. There's a 17-hour difference with the West Coast, but what that effectively means is that it's a 7-hour.
Yeah.
A 7-hour difference. It actually would be a little bit easier on the West Coast. Look, I take your point, and I am very familiar with that long drought period where you've got to, as soon as the Super Bowl's finished, like, okay, if you're interested in college basketball, maybe there's something going on there. But yeah, then there's that long period where all you've got is baseball, which very few Americans find that to be suitably nourishing anymore. Yeah, so there is a point. But the thing is, there have been so many times that people have tried to fill that, usually with spring leagues in American football. So there was the USFL in the 80s, which was, there was a documentary made by ESPN called Who Killed the USFL? The answer was pretty much Donald Trump.
The XFL.
No.
I got no idea.
Yeah. So Trump bought a USFL team with the aim of challenging the NFL on antitrust grounds and forcing them to buy his shitty USFL team.
Okay.
Instead, all he managed to do was bankrupt the USFL. Yeah. So USFL gone. There have been numerous attempts to fill it. And as I mentioned, the English Premier League covers some of that gap during that time, at least up until about June or whenever it is that it finishes. But yeah, I still... I don't think that the NRL is going to do it.
Let's keep going, Dave, with The Departed. Let's get into the actual content now.
Yes.
The Departed, let's start with Ken Buck.
Ken Buck. Yes. So we've talked a lot about Ken Buck on this show and how increasingly he just seems to be pissed off with the Republican Party, and he's voting against them on grounds which can always be identified as principled, but nonetheless just also reflect the fact that he's pissed off. I didn't know that he was going to be so pissed off that he would actually leave Congress end of this week or end of next week. Like that.
Without even telling Mike Johnson.
It's
found out from the press.
So spiteful. I love it. So for those keeping count, that reduces the effective Republican majority to 2. Yeah. It's now 218 to 213. They can't afford to lose more than 2 at this point. And Chaz's favourite governor, Jared Polis, has just announced today that the special election to replace him will be held on June 25th. So that's a long way off.
It's a long way off.
And the other 2 special elections are also in June, right?
There's 3.
There's
3. There's a primary for Kevin McCarthy's this week. The general election's May 21.
Yeah.
Bill Johnson is in Ohio, the Republican in Ohio. The primary's this week. The general election's in June, June 11. The Democrat, there's a Democrat one as well in New York. He went off to be the president of a performing arts center. His special election is April 30, so his one comes first.
This is the esteem in which members of Congress hold Congress. Yeah. Now, Ken Buck, like, there's not that much to say about his political career, I don't think. He's represented Colorado since 2015.
Yeah.
He's leaving in 2024, which gives him, I think that is basically the exact average lifespan of a career in the House of Representatives, which is 9 years.
He came in as a hardcore Tea Party.
He did, yes. He, member of Freedom Caucus. He ran for the Senate in 2000. Well, he announced his run for the Senate in 2009 at the height of Tea Party mania, saying he was alarmed by America's sudden lurch to the left, by which he was referring to the election of Barack Obama.
Yes.
And so he lost to Michael Bennet that year. And that was in the year that there was a massive Tea Party wave across the country. Colorado, I thought, would have been a pretty gettable state.
Back then, yeah.
Michael Bennet, not exactly the world's most talented politician.
Yeah, he doesn't give you starbursts.
No, he doesn't. He's run for president a couple of times, hasn't he?
At least once.
At least once.
2020.
Yeah. Yeah, he was part of that field.
Yeah, he made it to the second debate. Well done.
Yeah, so that's who Ken Buck lost to.
Yeah.
But because anyone can get elected to the House of Representatives, he did. And, I mean, in the lead up to this resignation, I was thinking, oh, yeah, I kind of like the last few things that he's done. But no, the last thing that he did was voting in favour of the TikTok divestiture.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah, so, no, it's not like he's had this often correct principled judgment. But anyway, I admire the spite. Good on you. And if you're wondering where have you heard us talking about him before, he was one of the, how many was it in the end? 3? 4?
What are you talking about?
Who didn't vote for the impeachment of Mayorkas.
It was 3, I think.
Yes, yeah. One of the 3 who did not vote on very principled grounds.
Well, he cited... He actually cited that when he was talking about why he resigned.
Yes, yeah.
The quote from him is, "We've taken impeachment and we've made it a social media issue,
yes,
as opposed to a constitutional concept. This place keeps going downhill, and I don't need to spend more time here."
Love it.
So yes, it's talking about which actually.
Yeah.
Oh no, but before I want your thoughts on the Mayorkas impeachment, because that's just drifting as well.
Yes, yeah.
But before we do that, I just wanted to say what I think this is about, by the way.
Yes.
And it's not just me. Lauren Boebert thinks it's about this as well. I think it's about Lauren Boebert. And she also thinks everything's about Lauren Boebert. But in this case, I think she's right. Which is, I think that, because a lot of people have been speculating about what is it that made him resign just out of nowhere. I mean, there's a grab going around.
Is it that bad that you're saying, I'm done?
It is the worst year of the 9 years and 3 months that I've been in Congress. And having talked to former members, it's the worst year in 40, 50 years to be in Congress.
But I actually don't think that's why he dropped out. The reason why I think he stopped is because Lauren Boebert is running to replace him, right?
Oh, right.
She's running in his seat.
Yes, yeah.
She's in a different seat.
Yep.
But that's too marginal for her liking.
Yes.
So she's trying to run...
Also, too marginal for her survival.
Yeah. So she's trying to run in a safe Republican seat.
Yes, yeah.
She's not doing too well at the moment.
No.
But Ken Buck's making sure that she doesn't get that seat. Because basically, they have... By him dropping out now, they have a special election, right?
Yeah.
That special election is going to be separate to the primary to replace him.
Right.
And I didn't know about the date until just now.
Yeah.
I don't remember where that fits in compared to the primary.
Yeah.
But basically, if at the same time people are voting on primaries and special elections, people are likely to vote for the same person.
They are.
Both.
Yeah.
Because with the exception of Lauren Boebert, every single person will run in both.
So this isn't just spiteful; it's also sneaky.
It is.
I'm liking this more and more.
You might go, why can't Lauren Boebert run in the special election to replace him? It's because she's already in Congress.
Yes.
So she would have to resign.
Yep.
To run in this seat. And she doesn't want to do that because that means she might be out of a job 6 months early.
Yeah.
And she kind of likes that pay.
She does.
So she's got to hang there and not be in the special election, which means it gives everyone else an advantage over her.
Yeah.
Not that she needs it because she's running, I think, 4th out of that group. But
Yeah.
still. And she's very bitter about this. She said this is a swampy backroom deal to try to rig an election forcing an unnecessary special election on the same day as the primary election will confuse voters, result in a lame duck congressman on day one, and leave the 4th District with no representation for more than 3 months. The 4th District deserves better.
Oh, sorry about that, Representative Beetlejuice.
Anyway, so that's what I think's going on.
Okay.
I think he did that.
Yeah. No, that sounds right. Yeah.
Now, to the Mayorkas impeachment, I just want to ask your view on this because it's just disappeared.
It has.
Like they impeached him, and then the idea is the Senate is then supposed to pick it up and hold the trial.
Yeah.
Mike Lee and Ted Cruz have sent a letter to calling for, like, they've noticed that this is just drifting. They say the Senate has a constitutional duty to try all impeachments. They say Schumer has allegedly planned to dispense with the articles of impeachment by simply tabling both individually, which means there would be no trial.
Yep.
Dick Durbin, I don't think, filled people with confidence that this was going to happen when he turned up on CNN the other week.
Do you believe that there should or will be an impeachment trial, or will you vote to dismiss the case outright?
Dana, we're looking at all the options, and I would just tell you, I think what the House did was a political stunt. It's never been done in history. There certainly is no evidence of a high crime or misdemeanor in any respect in the performance of Secretary Mayorkas, but we're considering all our options.
What do you want to happen? Would you like to dismiss it?
I'd like to see us get on with the business of the Senate. We have to pass appropriation bills. We're 5 months late. Credit Patty Murray and Susan Collins on a bipartisan basis in the Senate. But of course, the House has had its share of problems. I'd like to see us move forward and do our job.
Okay, that sounded like a yes, that you want to dismiss it.
I don't take it seriously.
Okay.
Not hard to read between the lines there,
No.
feel. So what are your thoughts? Do you think they should hold the trial or not?
No. Dismissing it would be a suitable fate for an utterly forgettable piece of political dinner theatre, which is what that was. Given that they couldn't even get the votes to vote for impeachment the first time around, it was such a transparent political stunt. You know, the political stunt is a word that gets overused, but Durbin's use of it is absolutely correct there. It just, spoke to the utter unseriousness of this tiny majority Republican House. This does not deserve to be voted on. There are plenty of other things for the Senate to do. If they don't vote on it, maybe this will discourage shit like this in the future. Everyone seems worried. Everyone is professing to be worried about impeachment just turning into this political tool that you use against whoever you don't like. Both Republicans and Democrats are saying that at this point. Okay, so if one of the potential outcomes of this was they don't even vote on it in the Senate, maybe that'll discourage this kind of shit.
Are you not concerned that that this will then set a precedent that the next time there's a Republican Senate and a Democratic House, they just refuse to hold the trial?
Well, let's have a look at what that would mean substantively. That might mean that people get impeached but never get convicted.
Yeah, I know, but the trial is important.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
And you're making the correct point as well.
Yes.
That especially when it's a different,
Yeah.
of a different party.
Yeah,
There's just zero chance of a conviction.
Yes.
I do agree.
Yeah.
But I do think the trial in itself means something. I think the trial. I mean, there's a reason they're doing it. The reason the Mayorkas impeachment exists is because they want to exploit the usage of the trial to make their issue more prominent in an election year. That's why they're doing it.
That's not the point of a trial, though, is it?
No, but it's the best you're going to get.
So, if trials are important, then saying we're going to have one, but the reason for it is to extend the dinner theatre to a second week.
Yes.
Yeah, to a second run. No.
So
the thing is, I understand that this is setting a precedent. I understand this will have consequences, but when we saw what happened with the two Trump impeachments, it's clear that it is a tool that actually can't be used for the purpose that it's supposed to be used for. There's future use is probably only going to be for things that it shouldn't be used for. And, so if this is going to discourage that, I'm all in favour of it.
For what's worth, McConnell doesn't give a shit either. His quote is, I haven't really thought about it.
He's got a lot of things to think about. Yes.
He's not very passionate about this.
No. He doesn't have to pretend to be anymore.
Yeah. Look, I mean, for what it's worth, if it was me, I would hold the trial. I would hold the trial, but I would use it to take advantage of that opportunity of publicity to ram home why the Republicans are full of shit on their talking points about immigration.
Yeah.
Because that's all they're going to do. All they're going to do is give immigration talking points and just use it that people are going to be tuning in. That the Democrats are weak on immigration. Use it to make Biden's case for himself. That the talking points used against him are bullshit. The open borders talking points, all that kind of stuff. Just like they did with Robert Hur, where we're going to get to soon.
Yeah.
They used the Robert Hur hearing as a perfect excuse to just ram Trump a lot. They could do the same thing with this impeachment. So they could turn it to their advantage.
Yeah.
But leaving that aside, even if it's not to their advantage, I am concerned about I think impeachment is farcical enough, and every step we take down the road is becoming more and more farcical.
Yes, yeah.
But anyway, I'm not surprised we disagree. That's cool.
Yeah.
Let's get into the State of the Union quickly. Now, I don't want to get into the basic theatre criticism because that's last week. Just want to sort of more just thoughts about looking back on it more broadly.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, in terms of post State of the Union polling, we got there's just been no bounce whatsoever,
no.
which isn't a surprise.
Yeah.
Amongst the 6 national surveys conducted after the speech, Joe Biden trails Trump in 5 of them. The Daily Costs poll is the exception. That's within the margin of error anyway. Of the 5 that he trails, he didn't even make up any ground in any of them at all. So as far as polling goes, complete failure essentially. That's not a surprise. That's
normal.
Okay, but
look, my read on it was, and as you said, it doesn't shift public opinion. That was for Biden to tell the Democratic Party, like not necessarily the voters, but the activists, the donors, the people involved with the party. I am here. Yeah. I'm not going anywhere. I am up for the fight. Yeah. You've got to get behind me. You've got no choice. I can give this a good crack.
Yeah.
That's basically what it was.
Yeah, I think you've combined 2 of the things that I was about to say, which is I think has specific functions rather than trying to win polls.
Yes, yeah.
One is to announce that this is the beginning of the general election campaign to the Democrats, who at the moment are not interested at all. That's why Biden's sucking in the polls so much.
Yep.
The Democrats are not enthusiastic and they're not up for it right now.
Yes, yeah.
And this is his way of saying, okay, which is why I think the fact it was such a partisan speech, which I think made it a bad State of the Union, it made it good for what he was trying to achieve.
Yes, yeah.
Because it did wake them up.
Yes.
It was pitching specifically the Democrats.
Yes.
And the proof that it worked is you just look at the money. He raised $10 million in the next 24 hours.
Yep.
So it obviously worked. It obviously got Democrats excited.
Can I just bust out a poll here, which it was conducted in late January, but I doubt that this picture has changed much. And this is a really good one. So this is from the UMass Amherst Department of Political Science. It was a poll of 1,064 voters, and it was asking people like how they felt about the presidential election. The specific question was, do you feel that a Trump-Biden rematch is very good for the country, somewhat good for the country, neither good nor bad for the country, somewhat bad for the country, or very bad for the country?
Yep.
Now, for all respondents...
I'm going to put this up, by the way, so you should be able to watch this.
All respondents, very bad, 26%, somewhat bad, 19%, neither good nor bad, 26%, somewhat good, 14%, very good, 15%. Yep. Right, so... The good combined is only 29%. Yeah. Bad combined is 35%. Among Republicans, though, bad combined is only 30%. 16% very bad, somewhat bad, 14%. Neither good nor bad is 25%. And then good is 16%. Very good is 29%. Right, so nearly a third of Republicans think that the Trump-Biden rematch is very good, something that they're very excited about. That is double the percentage of Americans more broadly who think it's good. Having a look at Democrats, very bad, 30%, somewhat bad, 26%. So that's 56% of Democrats who say this rematch is a bad thing. 23% neither bad nor good, 14% good, 7% very good. So contrast that to 29% of Republicans who say it's very good. So the gap in enthusiasm is absolutely massive. And even though, like I've been saying a lot of other people have been saying this is a rematch no one wants. Well, no, actually, this is a rematch that 35% of Republicans are actually quite excited about, and 45% of Republicans and 29% of them are extremely excited about it. Now, it turns out that the feelings of independents are somewhat closer to those of Democrats. So 33% say it's an extremely bad thing. That's the single biggest chunk anywhere in the poll. 14% say it's somewhat bad. So that means that combined, that's 47% of independents who say it's bad, compared to Democrats, which is 55%. 34% in typical independent fashion say it's neither good nor bad, but only 10% say it's good and only 8% say it's very good. So independents share the Democrats' antipathy towards this election. But, of course, there's no way of, there's little way of telling how they're actually going to respond to it in voting terms. But you can clearly see Republicans are way more enthusiastic about this. I think this also reflects that Republicans are a lot more confident that they're actually going to win.
I think that's what it definitely reflects.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, that was a very good poll from UMass Amherst.
Yeah, and so precisely because of that point, Biden wants the Democrats to wake up and to be excited and to get involved.
Yes, yeah.
And that's what this State of the Union was trying to do.
Yes, yeah.
And so I think he achieved that.
Yeah.
I think also, obviously, his number one priority is to take care of the age thing.
Yep.
And I think he did that as well.
Yes.
I think by screaming and carrying on like he did, like a bit of a loon.
Yep.
I think that works. And by times him speaking way too quickly.
Because I invested in family farms led by my Secretary of Agriculture who knows more about this than anybody I know.
Yes.
I think that was actually a good thing for him. I think poor old Kamala Harris got burnt over and over again because she's trying to lead standing ovations behind him, and he's just right past the applause point. So she stands up. She thinks he's going to give her an applause, and then she sits right back down again, embarrassingly.
Yes.
It was gold for him how many people afterwards on conservative networks couldn't be talking about, we're talking everything but.
Yes.
They're talking about him talk too fast. They were talking about him being angry.
Yes, yeah.
Like Hannity was just like, this is a paid advertisement as far as I'm concerned. But Biden should have just endorsed this at the end. Like this minute, it was just exactly what he was looking for.
Yeah.
His speech was so hyped up, it was bizarre. I will not be shouting the whole hour. Frankly, so at odds with everyday Joe, it's even frightening to me. He spent most of the night shouting, speeding through his speech, and clearly overcompensating from the normal everyday Joe that can barely string two sentences together. At times, it became uncomfortable watching him screaming and yelling and speeding through that speech. The AP affectionately called it feisty. I guess that's one way to describe it. Tonight, America saw let's say, a very different Joe Biden. I might call him jacked up Joe, and that's being charitable. He sounded like a hyper-caffeinated, angry old man.
Now, I don't know if Hannity thought he was getting a hit on him, but Biden would have been loving that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the fact is, no one's going to remember anything he said. It was all utterly forgettable.
Yes, yeah.
All they're going to remember is that.
Jacked up Joe.
Jacked up Joe. They're going to remember that he was a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And that's what he wants. Like to play against the stereotype.
Wow.
Right? So, I think he achieved that. I think that was good for him. I think also the byplay with Republicans that kept on going on, like that's good for him as well.
Yes.
Even though if you look at each individual example, they're often very lame. And often what he said made no sense if you stop to think about it.
Yes, yeah.
But it didn't matter. Just the fact he was looking conscious.
It's not about making sense.
Yeah, it's not.
Yes.
It's about being conscious and being unprogrammed.
Yep.
Not looking like a puppet. Like when he says worst, he looks like someone's puppet.
Yep.
He didn't look like a puppet up there.
That's good.
And so I think that was really good for him. And you look at his, they had an ad campaign ready to go the day after, which was totally about moving on from the age thing,
yeah.
which, like, once again, I don't think it's a great ad, but they're just trying to just end this as an issue.
Look, I'm not a young guy. That's no secret. But here's the deal. I understand how to get things done for the American people. I led the country through the COVID crisis. Today, we have the strongest economy in the world. I passed a law that lowers prescription drug prices, caps insulin at $35 a month for seniors. For 4 years, Donald Trump tried to pass an infrastructure law, and he failed. I got it done. Now we're rebuilding America. Donald Trump believes the job of the president is to take care of Donald Trump. I believe the job of the president is to fight for you, the American people, and that's what I'm doing. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Can we do one more take?
Look, I'm very young, energetic, and handsome. What the hell am I doing this for?
Once again, I don't even understand that joke at the end.
No.
It doesn't make sense and it doesn't matter.
Yes, yeah.
Like, you just need to show, hey, you know, he's making some joke. He's having some fun. He's got a bit of energy. He's back. The boy's back.
That's right. He's got to lean into the complete and utter superficiality of campaigning. Let's just admit the politics is about nothing.
Yeah, and I hope that his people take this away from the speech.
Yes.
That even when he stuffs up, it does not matter.
No.
He just has to get out there. And the perfect example is when he responded to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
When she yelled at him and he responded. I'm going to play that because, and what I want you to do now is I want you to think about how everything he says is wrong and shit. Everything.
I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth it taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly.
Okay, and then he's back on script. Okay, so what we saw then is, from his interruption, first of all, he gets the name wrong. Lincoln Riley. Secondly, after that, he says, how about the many thousands of people being killed by illegals? I don't understand what he's trying to say there. Is he trying to say, he's trying to be sarcastic? Saying, that's what he said. He said, how many thousands of people being killed by illegals?
See, I thought he said how many thousands of people being killed by legals.
That's why I thought at first. I actually went back.
Which actually would have made sense.
Yeah. Like if you were saying, sure, one illegal is killed, but how about all the other murders? But he didn't say that. He said illegal.
The cult of the murder victim of the illegal immigrant is one of the most creepily borderline fascist things.
Oh yeah, totally.
That I mean, it's been around for a while. Yeah, the angels. It's really, really creepy shit. Given how many people in America are killed under all kinds of circumstances all the time. The fact that you elevate somebody who was killed by an illegal immigrant to angel status, that is creepy, supernatural, cult, fascist shit. And it's one of the things that just always gets a cringe reaction out of me. And, you know, if I was Biden, I wouldn't even be interacting with somebody who dresses like that under any circumstances, let alone to the United States Congress. But, I see your point.
And he also used the phrase illegals, which sets Democrats off as well.
Yeah.
And on top of that, then he tried to explain his logic, which he explained it. I mean, I understood what he was trying to say in the second half, but he explained it very badly. He basically muffed that up as badly as he possibly could. And yet people still cited that moment as a triumph for him. And it's just because he was just he was just on his feet.
Yes, yeah.
It didn't matter that he stuffed up.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter. Just be out there, be part of the game. So I hope his people learn that lesson from
Okay.
that. Because I just don't think he could do it any worse than he did in that round.
Yeah.
And yet he still came off fine.
Yeah.
So it's anyway, and he is out there, to give him credit. His schedule the week after that State of the
Oh,
Union.
yes.
Friday, rally in Philadelphia in a school gym. Saturday, campaign in Atlanta, talking to minority small business owners, and another campaign rally. Then there was Monday, he went to New Hampshire, attended 2 events.
Yep.
Wednesday, he went to Milwaukee, 2 more events. Thursday, he went to Michigan to attend a heavily non-white community. That's 5 states in 7 days. That's how you do it.
Yep.
You got to keep on going. Now, I know he's president, so he can't do this all the time.
Yes, yeah.
But he's just got to do as much as he can.
Can I just also some quick thoughts on the swing states?
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's shaping up that Georgia is the one he's most likely to lose.
Yep.
That he, at the moment he's behind in all of them, but Georgia's going to be tough for him this time around. Brian Kemp actually just endorsed Trump, which that might not amount to much, but it amounts to something.
Yeah.
And in fact, some Democratic operatives are saying that they should be concentrating a lot more on North Carolina instead, because North Carolina just elected a crazy person in their Republican primary.
We'll definitely be talking more about
and that there could be some coattail effects from that.
Can I just say on that?
Yeah.
That I said this on air, but I want. But I'll say this here. I'll say it again and again and again.
Yeah.
He is not. Mark Robinson is not the usual crazy. Mark Robinson is crazy on social media.
Yes. Yeah.
When you in person,
yeah,
he seems a lot more charismatic and reasonable.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that he's going to come off as a moderate. He definitely will not. But he's going to come off as a passionate preacher type. He's not going to come off as a loon, Alex Jones type, which is what he seems like when you look at his social media.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see about that. But I actually think he's going to be hard to beat. But we'll see.
Okay, but anyway, just making the point, some Democrats are saying Georgia now is so unwinnable that that's where they should be looking. Arizona might be winnable partly because Kari Lake is going to be the Arizona Senate candidate and Kirsten Sinema has bowed out of that race altogether. But it really is it's the Midwest and Nevada that he needs to focus on.
Yeah. I was just going to say one other thing about campaigning as well. I know he can't campaign all the time because he's president. But there is something which I was reading about. Harry Truman. How I don't exactly understand why he did this, but he literally opened up his White House to a reporter for a week. There were things that were off limits that the reporter wasn't allowed to report on.
Yeah.
But other than that, they followed him around. And watched what he did behind the scenes, and they reported on that. And I was just thinking, when I was reading that, I was thinking, that's exactly what Biden should do.
Yeah.
Like people always talking about how he's so different behind the scenes. Well, show pick a reporter you can trust. Like, don't pick someone who's going to wreck you.
Yeah.
But like some McKay Coppins type.
Yeah.
Like I reckon that would be a great idea. Go on.
Do you know there's a legend that Stalin knew about the American atomic bomb before Harry Truman did?
I did not know that.
Yeah. As I said, it's a legend. It may well not be true. Peppers can check the homework, but it's a legend in popular circulation that the atom bomb was developed in such secrecy that Truman didn't know about it until he assumed office when Roosevelt died, whereas Soviet intelligence had already managed to tip off Stalin about its existence. Anyway, may well not be true.
The only other thing I'd say about the State of the Union is that the other thing he achieved, which I thought was good. Basically, I think it was a very successful State of the Union for him.
Yeah.
I think he also, if you look at, it's important to look at what they talk about in the first half hour, because that's when most people watch before they turn off, because it's a State of the Union.
Yep.
And the first 3 topics were Ukraine, democracy, abortion, and then the economy.
Yep.
That's the Nikki Haley section of the of the State of the Union. And he started off it was very aggressive against Trump in a way that I don't think he should necessarily should
my
have.
predecessor.
But he was clearly, that first half an hour was clearly about reaching out to Nikki Haley
Yep.
Republicans. And I think he may have done that quite successfully as well. And then we talked about the base. And he also tried to own the recovery, which I thought was a smart thing to do because at the moment he doesn't own the recovery at all, which was good. And I feel like him with the junk fees and the shrinkflation and all that stuff, while I think that's all a bit silly, I do understand the logic of saying that at the moment there are two things that people blame inflation on.
Yep.
One is the spending. The other is on corporate greed.
Yep.
And he wants people to blame it as much as possible on corporate greed.
Yes.
Even if him talking about shrinkflation is just bullshit, which
Yep.
I think it is essentially. He just wants to get that in people's heads.
Yep.
Because he wants to get them in that space where they're thinking about corporate greed and not thinking about spending.
Yep.
And so I think that was successful as well.
Yes.
It's, I think that was smart as well. So, and the final thing is I think he tried to set up, well, I think he's going to do later, which is to own patriotism.
Yep.
I think Joe Biden likes patriotism. There's no doubt about that. Trump has always been particularly ham-fisted at trying to do patriotism.
Yes, yeah.
And Joe Biden, like he likes that a lot.
Yes,
and,
yeah.
and as president, he can really do that.
Yes.
So there's a bit.
I say to the American people, when America gets knocked down, we get back up. We keep going. That's America. That's you, the American people. It's because of you America's coming back. It's because of you our future is brighter. It's because of you that tonight we can proudly say the state of our union is strong and getting stronger.
Look, I'll skip past the policy stuff because I think we should talk about other topics. Is there anything that you want to say? Because he announced a few policies which are kind of interesting as well. Is there anything that you want to say about Katie Britt? Because I think enough has been said about her.
Yeah, look, it just continues to be the graveyard of promising up-and-coming Republican women or people of colour. I regret saying at a public event last Friday that her speech wasn't a catastrophe because it clearly was.
Yeah.
And what gives it away was the way that conservatives reacted to it. Where the overwhelming sentiment was, this was not what we needed. Or as one of them said, everything about that was wrong. Really people could figure out that just staging it in a kitchen was not a good idea. But of course, Tommy Tuberville, who has never come across a situation that he can't make worse, calling her a housewife. Yeah. More than once, calling her a housewife. What definition of housewife are you using to apply to, first of all, your Senate colleague from the same state who works in the same building as you, is probably there more frequently than you are, who before that headed up the Alabama Chamber of Commerce, before that was a chief of staff to Richard Shelby, before that was a lawyer. What definition of housewife are you using here?
Yeah.
A wife who sometimes lives in a house?
Yeah.
Like it was a description that really was not needed. Was inaccurate, but of course Tommy had to say it. And can I just reiterate again for the Australian audience, yes, Tommy Tuberville is a real person. We haven't made him up. He's not a figment of my imagination. And his name actually is pronounced Tuberville, even though it's spelt Tuberville.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. His real name is Tommy Tuberville.
I am actually encouraged by that, though. Not Tommy Tuberville. I'm never encouraged by him.
Yeah.
But what happened and the way the Republicans in particular reacted to it, I'm encouraged by. Because the thing about her basically selling herself as a mum.
Yes,
when she's like really selling herself short. She's more than just a mum.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, like it's and people say, if it was a guy, they never would say I'm a dad first of all. Like and they hold their speech at soccer training.
We are moving actually, I think, into an era of increasingly cringeworthy dad identification.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But that's what people said. But anyway,
yes,
what I was going to say is Katie Britt's entire Senate campaign was
Yes.
mum on a mission. She sold herself successfully in
Yes.
Alabama
Yeah.
as mum first, all about mum. Not a lawyer,
Yeah.
not a politician, not a highly successful individual.
Yes.
Mum. And she just tried to do the same thing again. That
Yeah.
worked in Alabama nationally,
Yes.
and it didn't work
It
nationally.
did not work nationally.
I love that.
Yes.
It didn't work amongst Republicans nationally.
No, it didn't.
Like, that to me was a moment that where the red states would have
Yeah.
seen that and were going, well, we can't do this shit anymore.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that actually was a strong moment
Yeah.
for gender equality.
Yes, yeah.
Like, in terms of going forward, they're not going to be doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And because Katie Britt certainly paid the penalty as a result of
Yeah.
that.
And
So I think it's great.
like, I don't know if she was reading from a script that included theatrical instructions.
Oh God!
But
Don't they have directors?
yeah,
They pre-record these things. There's no way that they couldn't have said, Katie, take two, Katie, take 7, Katie, take 14. Eventually, you're going to be so tired, you're going to stop doing that shit.
yeah. No, it was pretty bad.
It was very bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when people are taught public speaking, often they're taught contrast is a very important technique. You know, you say some bits loud, some bits soft, some bits you're very serious, some bits you're very lighthearted. She seems to have got an extremely hyperactive and crude version of that advice from someone.
Yes, she does.
Yes.
I don't have anything else to say.
No. I'm embarrassed just thinking about it. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, for those who don't know, look, we don't have the time.
Yeah.
I
I did love the thing that Axios uncovered about the talking points that were sent out from one of her supporters to conservative
America's mum.
influencers. Yes, yeah. That it was America's Reagan-esque mom. Yeah, she gets it.
Yeah, people are supposed to call her America's mum. That's
Yes,
what they refer to her as America's
And I
mum.
don't think any of them did that. I mean, I don't know if Charlie Kirk was one of the influencers that got sent that, but he said she looked like she was hosting a cooking show.
But once again, they're not going to do that next time.
No.
Like, the mum thing is over. And
Yeah.
I think that's great. That's great for women in politics in America. Let's talk TikTok.
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay, so yesterday, the House of Representatives did vote for the bill that would force ByteDance to sell TikTok or face the prospect of getting removed from app stores within the United States. So they've been careful to say this is not a ban, but it is essentially forced divestiture, and the alternative to that is a ban within the US. There are already pretty firm indications that even if this gets through the Senate, Biden has said that he will sign it.
Yes.
That even if it gets through, ByteDance won't sell.
Yeah.
They would.
They might not be allowed to sell.
No. Because
They have to
Beijing.
get permission from China.
Yeah,
the
Beijing
Chinese
has said
government.
that they'll block it. So one of the theories about this was that the US government never really wanted to see it banned. They just wanted to see, they wanted to use this as leverage for the divestiture, but that leverage might not work. So some interesting party dynamics going on here.
Yep.
It was 50-0 coming out of the committee. The China, I can't remember what it's called. It's got some very grandiose name. As we have noted often on PEP, feeling the need to stand up to China is one of the few bipartisan areas. I mean, it's the most bipartisan area of American Congress now. This was also reflected in the vote, which had more than 350 people voting in favour.
265?
Yep. Only 15 Republicans voted against and something like 50 Democrats voted against. The Democrats who voted against were mainly the progressive, younger crew. Trump was against it. Now, this is despite the fact that Trump was the first one who originally, first of all, he proposed an outright ban. Do you remember the hilarious circumstances under which he wanted it banned?
No, I don't.
Okay. This was in June of 2020.
Yep.
When, against a lot of public health advice, he decided to resume his rallies.
Yeah.
And the first rally that he decided to hold was in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Is this the one that killed Herman Cain?
Yeah, this is the one that killed Herman Cain.
Yeah.
In an arena that could hold 16,000 people. But they sold, or the 800,000 people reserved tickets.
Yes.
They had set up this massive marshalling area outside because they weren't saying to anyone, oh, no, you can't come because it's oversold. They wanted to have this spectacle of 800,000 people outside, trying to get in to see Trump. Now, it turned out that the vast majority of those 800,000 tickets were actually wily teens on TikTok. Specifically K-pop fans.
That's right.
Fucking with the Republicans.
I forgot this.
Yes. Now, what actually happened was that 6,000 people turned up. So was about enough to fill a third of the arena. Yeah, still managed to murder poor old Herman Cain. Anyway, so first of all, that was the end of Brad Pascali's career as Trump's digital guru.
Yep.
Because he was outsmarted by a bunch of teen K-pop fans on TikTok. And second, that was the beginning of a vendetta against TikTok by Trump. So Trump,
That's so good, Dave, because people have missed this. People have been talking about, why has he switched around? His original opinion was the authentic Trump. And now he's inauthentic. Maybe it's the other way around.
Yes.
Like maybe the original one was the inauthentic one because it was just angry and bitter.
Yes, yeah. The original was pissed off about being embarrassed by teens. That was why. And so he did actually, he was, I think, quickly advised by people that a ban wasn't possible, but
it got turned down by court.
Yeah. They did come up with he actually did have an executive order, didn't he?
He did
order two executive orders.
Yeah, both failed.
To order the sale.
Yes.
But now Trump is against the TikTok ban. When you listen to his reasoning, which I believe we are about to hear.
Look, you're going to hear some of it. It goes for 3 minutes.
You're about to go on a voyage over the sea of Trump's consciousness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Look, this podcast can only go for 3 hours.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And I'm conscious of the time.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this backwards.
Yeah.
I'm going to see how much time we have left over at the end.
Okay.
I will fill it. This podcast is going to go for exactly 3 hours.
Okay, yes.
I'm going to backfill with the maximum possible amount of Trump justification.
Yes, yeah.
Because it'd be great to listen to hear the whole 3 minutes, but I don't want to burn a topic.
Yeah.
So we can listen to Trump make no sense for 3 minutes.
Okay.
But this is whatever we had left over.
I was at the point where I could have gotten it done if I wanted to. I sort of said, you guys decide, you make that decision, because it's a tough decision to make. Frankly, there are a lot of people on TikTok that love it. There are a lot of young kids on TikTok who will go crazy without it.
There we go. That's what we could fit in.
Yeah. Now, in the middle of that, he actually makes a very important point. He makes the most important point in all this, which is that a lot of people like TikTok.
They do.
A lot of young people like TikTok. That is actually, in my mind, the central issue in all of this. We'll come back to that. But the other stuff he was saying about this will give Facebook a lot of power. That is not how social media works.
No.
I think everyone is aware that TikTok's audience tends to be younger. They are.
No, not as young as you think.
Well, I know it's not necessarily all Gen Z. There's a lot of
millennials. A
lot of millennials on there.
I've got the numbers on that actually.
Yes, please give us the number. The numbers.
Yeah, because number one, there's 170 million users. Sure.
Well, 170 million people have downloaded the app.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And the first thing I just want to point out is that people people who think that it's all kids. Have a look. This is the 13 to 17-year-old.
Yep.
You can see that TikTok is it's popular. It's 63%, but it's only got 3% more usage from the teenagers than Snapchat.
Yeah.
Which no one gives a shit about.
And Instagram.
Instagram is up there as well. And YouTube's obviously higher.
Yeah.
You can also see it's going down. But what's happening at the same time as this? I just show you adults while I'm at it.
Yep.
Adults TikTok is at 33%.
Yeah.
Just below Pinterest. I'm not sure people would pick that. And just above LinkedIn.
Yes,
Those two powerhouse social media companies. Is between LinkedIn and Pinterest. And Instagram's 47%. Facebook is 68%.
Look at where Twitter is.
And Twitter is at 22%.
Yeah.
For those listening, you got Twitter's on the same as Reddit.
Yeah.
22%. Snapchat is higher than Twitter amongst adults. Who uses Snapchat?
I've never used
Peppers, do any of you use Snapchat?
Do we need to have a Snapchat presence?
Maybe we do. Maybe we need a Snapchat presence. That's where all the adults are, apparently.
Yeah.
27% of adults use Snapchat. 33% use TikTok.
Anyway, the point of this data doesn't suggest that there's going to be a mass migration to Facebook.
Sorry, just to finish off the point I was going to make, which was that 40% of the app's users are now in their 30s and 40s. 40%.
Yes, yeah.
And they are also its most prolific posters.
Yeah.
The kids are turning off it, and the more 30s and 40s you got, the less the kids are going to want to do it.
Yes.
Obviously,
Yeah.
So what TikTok has in its near future is becoming the new Facebook, where older people use it, and it pisses the kids off, and then they go do something else. So anyway, go on.
But anyway, there's unlikely to be a mass migration to Facebook.
Yes.
Across a couple of generations.
Yes.
I would say if anyone would be...
The Snapchat. That's what's coming.
It would, my instinct around this would be that YouTube would be the principal beneficiary.
Well, YouTube's already got everyone using it.
Yes, yeah. And so using it more. But anyway, that point made absolutely no sense. I would say Facebook has done a lot to actually help Trump over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest political accounts on Facebook are all
yeah. And that's where his demographic actually is.
Yeah.
But no, what he's upset about with Facebook is that Mark Zuckerberg donated some amounts of money to local election authorities to help them run elections better.
They call it Zuckerbucks.
Zuckerbucks. Yeah. It was just quite well-meaning milquetoast kind of, we just want to have better elections, which Trump holds responsible for rigging the election against him. Illegal. He starts rambling about illegal lockboxes. That's what he's talking about. He saw a documentary that was made by David Bossy that talks a lot about this. This is why he doesn't like Facebook, which is weird because Facebook is objectively a good thing for him.
Yeah, and that's why he truthed out. If you get rid of TikTok, Facebook and Zuckerschmuck, I like that.
Zuckerschmuck,
will double their business. I don't want Facebook, who cheated in the last election, doing better. They are a true enemy of the people.
Yeah. Okay. So Trump's reasoning makes absolutely no sense there, but. I'm certainly on the same side of this issue as him. I don't think that TikTok should be banned.
Well, I don't think so either.
Or the divestiture forced either.
Yeah.
I will give my reasons for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's finish with Trump before you give your reasons.
Yeah, I'm finished with Trump.
No, but you haven't even mentioned Yas, which is what.
Yes, of course.
People think he's been bought off. Steve Bannon thinks he's been bought off. Steve Bannon said just tweeted out something like Yas equals Yas coin with an article about Trump supporting TikTok. And Yas is a guy who's He's got $33 billion in ByteDance, which is a 15% stake. He's a conservative hedge fund manager. He donates a lot to Republicans. He's donated, I think, pretty much nothing to Trump so far.
Yeah.
But he did have a meeting with Trump a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, yeah.
And Trump insists that they didn't talk about TikTok. They only talked all they talked about, he said, is education.
They wouldn't have needed to because Kellyanne Conway is his conduit.
That's the first thing I was going to say.
Yes,
Kellyanne Conway is their chief lobbyist.
Yes, yeah.
Like she's been doing the rounds.
And when Trump was actually making that point about a lot of people like TikTok, you could tell that was a garbled recollection of a conversation that he'd had with Kellyanne. I think Kellyanne Conway's trying to convince him that it would be a good campaign tool, which who knows, but. Anyway, so
the other thing I was going to say is that, I mean, you've kind of touched on this, is that what a lot of people haven't considered, I think, is that he just wants to win an election.
Yeah.
And he's thinking young people like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm doing okay with Biden's not doing so well with young people at the moment. So why not?
Yeah.
So I think actually just for once, I'm not being cynical.
Yeah.
I think I'm sure the money, the money's probably part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think he just wants to win an election.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about this is that we seem to be paying more attention to what Trump has said about this than Republicans are.
Well, the House.
The view in the House seems to be he doesn't really know what he thinks about this issue. He hasn't actually, he's expressed this view, but he's also said that ByteDance is a national security threat, and then he didn't then double down on it after the vote. He didn't go after anyone, so he doesn't really care very much about it. So House Republicans don't seem to think that this is a serious Trump position.
Yeah, although strangely, it seems that the real obstacle is the Senate, which you never would have predicted originally. Like you would have thought, cracking down hard on China, that's right down the Senate. That's what the Senate love.
Yeah.
But
no, they don't seem very enthusiastic about it at all.
Chuck Schumer, when asked about this, said, I'll have to consult and intend to consult with my relevant committee chairman to see what their views would be.
Yeah.
Then Maria Cantwell, who's the Commerce Committee chair, said, I'm not sure what we'll do yet. Got to talk to lots of people. The whole point here is you have a dilemma. You want free speech, but you also want the United States to have some ability to protect US citizens or US military from foreign actors who might be deleterious in what they would be using as a tool of communication. And Dick Durbin, again, old mate Dick, said Judiciary Committee Chair, and Whip said cutting out a large group of young voters is not the best known strategy for re-election.
No.
And meanwhly, you got Rand Paul, who's saying nothing's happening over my dead body, essentially. He's going to hold up for at least a week.
Yes, yeah.
They only have 6 weeks left in the session, and they've got 3 weeks that they've got pretty much booked up. So they're running out of time.
Yeah.
So it might not happen.
I don't think it's going to happen. But it shouldn't happen.
Okay, now so tell us.
So I just don't buy the national security argument at all.
Well, tell us what the national security argument is.
The national security argument has 2 parts.
Yep.
One is that this is potentially a huge amount of data on Americans that could fall into the hands of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yep.
Now, there has never been any evidence that ByteDance has actually handed over this evidence to the Chinese Communist Party.
Nope.
It is a reasonable point that any Chinese company that big is pretty deeply intertwined with the Chinese Communist Party, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are going to hand over data. And in fact, ByteDance, aware of the fact that this is an issue for Americans, did actually offer pretty sincerely to hold all of its American data in a facility in Texas where it wouldn't be accessible.
I have a video of them talking about this. It is the creepiest video you're ever going to see. So don't.
Oh yeah. No, that is yeah, I've seen this. Yeah.
Just hug your children while you're listening to this.
Yeah.
You don't want them to be unhugged. They're gonna be scared.
Yeah.
Our app is connected to Oracle, a trusted U.S. cloud provider with strong security credentials. The technology that powers the TikTok app in the U.S. runs in Oracle's secure cloud environment, and our plans include appointing other trusted third parties to independently assess the security of the environment on an ongoing basis. If you're a U.S. user logging into TikTok, all your data is stored by default in this cloud, where access is managed by a dedicated team of U.S. employees. This U.S. team is employed by a separate company called U.S. Data Security, or USDS, that will operate separately from the rest of TikTok and its parent company, ByteDance. We've established USDS and are in the process of moving over 1,000 U.S. employees into that company. To provide additional safeguards, our plan is for USDS to report to an independent board of directors who will be American citizens with strong cybersecurity credentials.
You buying that?
Look, it's as good as any other software company, as good as any other tech giant offers.
Yep.
The real issue here is how much data everyone is constantly handing over to these companies.
You can buy it.
Yeah, you can.
It's legal.
It would be a lot easier for China just to buy the data from someone else. So I don't think that TikTok's any more of a national security threat in that respect than anyone else. Okay, so the second major argument is that it could potentially be a tool of influence for the CCP.
Yes.
And certainly when, TikTok got its user base to start lobbying Congress, that was taken as evidence by certain members of Congress. And, this is an example of how the Chinese government could exercise its power over Americans.
Because they had countless kids ringing up. Like,
Yes.
They
Yeah.
push to users of TikTok. And they had all these kids
Yes.
ringing up saying both that they would kill the congressperson and that they would kill themselves. There's a lot of killing going on from these kids. So, yeah, and people are saying, oh, this shows that they have this army of our own children they're turning against us.
Yeah. Once again, there is no actual evidence to this point of China using TikTok to conduct some kind of psyop. Yes, the algorithm is probably tweaked in a way that means you're not going to see very much critical content about Hong Kong or Tibet or the Uyghurs.
Well, we know for a fact there have been leaked documents
that
have shown that TikTok instructs its moderators to censor videos that mention Tiananmen Square, Tibetan independence, or the banned religious group Falun Gong.
Right, yes. Yeah, which that's the kind of standard set of things that you get censorship around in China. Sure, I don't want to see that censorship, but like, does that really amount to that's a Chinese psychological operation against the United States? I don't think so. When you consider Facebook has been used to live broadcast massacres.
Yeah.
Facebook has been used to organise genocides. Twitter was used to organise January 6th. All social media has the potential to be used for these very bad purposes. The US government has wanted, and Congress has wanted for years, to do things about the privacy issues around social media companies, about the content moderation issues with social media companies. And we're not just talking about bad speech there. We're talking about images of abuse and things like that, as well as antitrust issues around how big some tech giants are. What have they been able to do? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. They're going after TikTok, first of all, because it's China, and this is the one area of bipartisan consensus that they can get. So they're not going after the most important issues here. They're going after, what they can build political consensus around. But the other reason why they can do this to TikTok, why is it imaginable that they can do this to TikTok, is because this is not the social media platform that members of Congress and their allies in the media use. Right? It's not just because of the fact that a large part of TikTok's user base is people who can't vote or who are otherwise politically underrepresented. It's because this doesn't matter to any member of Congress's life. If you talked about banning Twitter a couple of years ago because of all of the shit that happened with Twitter, like members of Congress and journalists would have been so incredibly upset about it, not for political reasons, but because of the fact that they're all addicted to it. Yeah. Now, as far as TikTok goes, I have never used TikTok. I've only ever seen it by accident. I've got the vaguest idea of what it is. I've got no idea of how it works. That puts me in the same category as most of the people who were voting on this legislation, and probably all of the people who came up with this legislation, as well as a lot of the journalists who are covering it. It's when it's something that doesn't affect your life at all, but potentially does affect the lives of 100 million people, you've got to be very, very careful about actually banning it. Like, yes, it would not make a single difference to my life at all if TikTok disappeared. But I can think of some apps that would really significantally affect my life if they disappeared. And
Connections.
Connections.
Don't touch connections.
Like, how would I feel if someone decided that that one of those apps was a national security threat? I don't think that people are doing enough putting themselves in the shoes of people who actually get a lot of joy out of TikTok, which is it's clearly a lot of people. Imagine how upset people would be if Facebook was banned.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, that is a significant area of connection with other people in their lives. And yes, you can point to all kinds of ways in which TikTok is bad. I've heard that its algorithm is incredibly addictive, but that goes for a lot of things on the internet, including gambling sites and porn sites and Twitter. We can't just single TikTok out for that. We can't judge, we think this is bad for other people's lives, therefore we're going to ban it. That because you could ban potentially anything. on those grounds. So I think that's what actually pisses me off the most about it. The fact that it's possible because it's not their social media.
Yeah, look, I think that's a fair point. That's a great point, actually.
Yeah.
I've got a few other points to make on this. The first of which is on the propaganda thing.
Yep.
Who uses TikTok for news?
Yeah.
Like, there seems to be an assumption here that people use TikTok for news. Now, number one, remember what I just said about the fact it's actually millennials that are using TikTok at the moment?
Yeah.
Why don't we have a look at what adults use, social media companies, adults use to see news? Here we go. Here's a graph for you. 30% use Facebook, 26% use YouTube, 16% use Instagram, and 14% use TikTok. Amazingly, Twitter almost gets up to TikTok, even though Twitter, we've now established, is the pissiest social media company.
Yes.
I know you don't use TikTok, so you wouldn't know this.
No.
TikTok is incredibly not newsy. Like, that's part of the sale of TikTok. Is that it's not like that.
This is another thing I just wanted to say about this is, in my understanding, I might be wrong here, and someone who's used TikTok for a few years might be able to correct me, but my understanding is if you look at all of those sites that we just showed, TikTok would be the one where the user experience hasn't actually changed since it's been in existence. It's offering up the same thing now that it always has. Every one of those others has got worse.
Yeah.
Like, the user experience has got a lot worse. Facebook, it's much harder and harder to actually see people that you're friends with. You're just getting a bunch of sponsored content and a bunch of lame shit that's trying to emulate TikTok unsuccessfully. We don't even need to talk about what has, what's happened to Twitter. YouTube's full of ads now, but, it's still going to continue to be popular. YouTube at least still is the same thing that it used to be. But my understanding is TikTok, its core user experience actually hasn't changed. If the divestiture from ByteDance was forced, it would have to change because the algorithm is currently written in China.
Yeah, and what if they sell it?
Yeah.
They're going to sell it. They're not going to sell the algorithm.
No.
They're going to keep the algorithm.
Yes,
They'll sell the rest. The bit that no one cares about. To America. That's how.
But then they'd have to come up with an American-made algorithm, right? Which would be shit.
Yeah,
we all know that's going to be shit.
Yeah. Look, once again, I appreciate what you're saying. I don't want to act like I'm some TikTok expert. I use it like fleetingly.
Yes.
But I've been using it fleetingly for a few years. Just because I feel like I need to know this shit.
Yeah.
But I'm no expert. But the experience has changed.
Oh, it has.
It has. They've added this TikTok shop thing, which is fucking annoying.
Oh, okay.
It's the equivalent of the fact that like on Twitter, there's so many ads now that they didn't used to be.
Yeah.
It's not quite as bad, but it's there's a lot more e-commerce.
Oh, okay.
Which you don't particularly want.
Right. Yeah.
that pops up in your feed. So like I say, it's not. Perfection.
Yeah.
But, I mean, look, I think your core point is correct.
Yes, yeah.
But they're on the way to shitifying themselves as well.
Yeah, okay.
Like as these things always do as they get big.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, number one, less people get news from TikTok. Number two, even the news they get isn't newsy news. Have a look at this graph on the topics. That is most popular on TikTok. Look at that, entertainment versus the rest, and then second is dance, then pranks, then fitness sports, then home reno, and it goes on. Like it's not a newsy platform.
Pranks are a form of news.
Prank news.
Well, you elevated it into an art form.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure I'd call us a news service.
Yeah.
Anyway, but what's going on here? I'll tell you what's going on for this. The reason why and this is also tied up with the propaganda thing.
Yes, yeah.
The one thing these guys know about TikTok is that it's pro-Palestine.
Ah, right.
That's the one thing they know.
Ah, okay.
They know that there are a bunch of videos on TikTok that are pro-Palestine and anti-Israel, and they're going, "Oh shit, this is the future when China invades Taiwan." That's what they're thinking.
Okay, right, yeah.
They're thinking we're going to have our kids telling us to not protect Taiwan,
right?
Because because they've seen some video on TikTok. That's what they're thinking.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Like, and I can understand the logic of saying, okay, right now it's not newsy. But China's fighting really hard to not give this up. Why are they fighting so hard to not give this up? Maybe because they think it's valuable. And they're not using it right now but maybe somewhere down the track they might use it. And maybe at that time at that time down the track, which we can't see now, when they do use it, we'll really wish they weren't using it. Like that is the logic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But while I think that logic is not unsound, I disagree with it.
Yes, yeah.
For a number of reasons. Okay, first of all, like I said, this is very hypothetical because people don't use it for news. Second thing, the suggestion that when you take it out of the App Store, it goes away is really not true. It's on 170 million phones.
Yes.
It's not going away. The people talk about like banning it. No, that's not a ban. They'll still be able to use TikTok.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll still work. The internet will still work, right? It's on their phones.
Yes.
And you know what? If they can't download it off an American server, they'll download it off a Chinese server.
Yes.
The first thing that will happen if they take it off the App Store and take it off American servers is the Chinese will provide a server for Americans to download US TikTok from. Like, that will happen immediately. And you know what? I reckon it'll become more popular because right now it's becoming less popular amongst the kids because these daggy 30-year-olds are coming and buying teapots.
Yeah.
Like, when it's something you get from the black market, oh my God, it's going to be cool again. And so I actually think it will reverse the daggification of TikTok and make it cool again if they did that. Now, I'm not saying, stronger than ever. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if you think it will disappear, you're wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'll tell you what will disappear, Project Texas or whatever it's called, that will disappear.
Yes.
The attempt to try and ameliorate America will disappear.
Yeah.
And there's just going to be full ball whatever the hell China wants because they're getting it from Chinese servers.
Yeah.
So they may be creating a monster.
Yes.
By doing that. That's the first thing I'd say on that.
Also, the national security argument, that has been rejected by the Montana Supreme Court.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's the next thing. Is this legal? Is this even legal? Yeah. Because here's the thing. Like you say, Montana, the court's already rejected that argument.
Yeah.
And the basically what they say is the legal side of this is that this is a little bit different than the Montana legislation, but the legal side of it is Congress can't ban outright any social media platform unless it can prove that it poses some legitimate and serious privacy and national security concern that can't be addressed by any other means. They got what they call strict scrutiny, which means if there's any other way you can get around this, they should use that other way.
Yes.
Well, I just played you the world's creepiest video where TikTok tell you exactly how they're getting around the national security concern.
Yes.
So for them to make this legal, they've got to prove that TikTok's lying.
Yeah.
Because if you believe what TikTok is saying, they're taking care of the national security concern.
Yes.
So I don't think they can do that.
No.
So I think there's a real question mark that would be legal anyway, even if they do pass this. Also, how is this sale supposed to work?
Yeah.
Who's going to buy it? Has to be a very big company.
Yes.
TikTok's worth, I don't know how many hundreds of billions of dollars. Has to be a big company. Right, so
it's more than 200 billion.
Yeah,
yeah.
So there are only so many companies that can afford it, and those companies are exactly the companies you don't want to buy TikTok.
Yeah, yeah.
Like those tech companies.
Yes.
When you start getting antitrust issues, right? Like so people should be thinking about that. Now, Steve Mnuchin is trying to organize a conglomerate to buy it, where no one has more than 10%, and they're all Americans, and he wants to get a piece of it. I don't know if he's going to pull it off, but people should at least think about how this sale is meant to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of question marks there as well. We haven't mentioned free speech.
No. We barely even need to mention free speech.
It's kind of obvious.
Yes, yeah.
This is where Elon Musk comes in and Tucker Carlson. Those guys are a bit worried about it as well.
Yes, yeah.
Where they're like, okay.
Yeah, no, Elon Musk is not going to buy it. Elon Musk doesn't have the money.
No, don't for a second think I was suggesting he was going to buy it.
No.
I mean, he's against it.
Yes, yeah.
And the reason he's against it, the reason Tucker Carlson is against it, is they go, yeah, okay, who's next?
Yes.
Like once you start doing this, who's next? And I think that's worth looking at. There is definitely a slippery slope built into the law itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, how you define who comes under this law is interesting. It's the national security risk at the moment only applies to China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea right now. They're the countries, but what does it mean, national security risk? An app is deemed to be controlled by a foreign adversary if A, it is headquartered in one of those countries. That's easy. B, if one of those countries owns a 20% stake or more. That's easy.
Mm-hmm.
C, if the app is subject to, quote, direction or control by one of those foreign adversaries. Now, that's not so easy.
No.
What's control mean?
Yeah.
Like the point's been made that arguably people could have argued that Facebook was controlled by Russia in some respect back in 2021 when people remember it was the whole Facebook's been co-opted in elections and so forth. Like you could so see the way the argument would get made by someone who's trying to take them down.
Yes.
Like it's a bullshit argument, but it would get made.
It would.
You know, like there is definitely slippery slope potential, I feel, in all this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So which concerns me as well. And the bottom line is let's say that the doomsday scenario has occurred.
Yeah.
Where China invades Taiwan. China tries to manipulate the algorithm to promote anti-Taiwan posters. Okay? It will be really obvious when that happens.
Yeah.
It'll be really obvious. And you know what? TikTok is not the only social media.
No, absolutely. Yes.
There's Snapchat.
Yeah.
So
anyway, there you go, Peppers. On this issue, we're on the same side as Trump, Elon Musk,
pro-Trump,
and Tucker Carlson.
Pro-Carlson. I love all three of them.
And
There you go. I think we've probably said enough about it.
Yeah, I think we have.
Okay. Stats Nugget. Woo! Who do you think was the highest paid actor in 2023? There's an Oscars thing in this one. Who do you reckon? I know who I would guess. And I'd be wrong.
Don't know.
I would have guessed Margot Robbie. That's what I would guess. I thought Barbie made a lot of money.
Yeah.
She's a producer on it. She gets a slice of it.
Mm-hmm.
No, she was second, $59 million. I'm going to leave first for a little bit. I'm going to tell you third was Tom Cruise.
Okay.
Makes sense. Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
Top Gun Maverick.
Yes.
Yeah, $45 million. Fourth was Matt Damon, Oppenheimer and Air. Ryan Gosling also.
Yeah.
It was tied fourth, $43 million.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yes.
I'm going to skip sixth for a second. Seventh was Leonardo DiCaprio, $41 million. That makes sense.
Yep.
The most depressing person in this list is Jason Statham, $41 million. Does he count as an actor? I don't know. Ninth was Ben Affleck. Yeah, I don't know what he made, but he's around. $38 million. 10th, Denzel Washington. I've got no idea what he made. $24 million.
God, this isn't exactly like a fresh young crop.
I'm about to make that point. Okay.
Yeah.
Sixth is Jennifer Aniston on $42 million. Now, if you're wondering, what the hell did she do?
Yeah.
Did she make that much money in doing Friends?
Yeah.
Like what's going on? Well, she made her money in the same thing that our number one guy made the money. Adam Sandler was the highest paid actor of 2023.
Of course.
$73 million of that Netflix money.
Wow.
He made Murder Mystery 2. He also was part of Leo, whatever that is, some animation, and The Outlaws with Jennifer Aniston on Netflix as well. And he also acted alongside his wife and daughters in the comedy You Were So Not Invited to My Bar Mitzvah. What an Adam Sandler title that is.
Oh, Adam Sandler. So at some point, I think in the 2000s, he actually managed to make 5 movies in a row set in holiday resorts.
I can believe that. Yeah, the memory one was one of them.
Yeah. Apparently, his DVDs are massively popular in all kinds of places, but especially Latin America.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so before the Netflix money, like it was apparently just vast DVD sales.
Is that the reason for all the immigration? Is that what's going on?
What is it? I mean, I thought
Adam Sandler's a push factor.
Uncut Gems showcased like what a good actor he can be. That was a fantastic movie.
And so did You Are So Not Invited to My Bar Mitzvah.
but like, yeah, he knows which side his bread is buttered on. Let's put it that way.
Looks like it's buttered on every side.
Yeah, it does. It really.
My major point is that you've already hit on, but even without the two mystery people, which is there's only one of them that I can see who's under 50.
Like all of these,
which is Margot Robbie. She's 33.
Yeah. With the exception of Margot Robbie, Like all of these people, I think, probably had a big year in 1997.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It's extraordinary.
And Ryan Gosling as well is a bit of a late comer.
Oh shit! Yeah, no, he's younger than 50. He's 40, 45, maybe 46. He's getting there. He's close.
Yeah.
He's not far off, and he's been around for 25 years as well.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, it's it just pop culture has become so old.
It really has.
Such stasis.
And like I do have this uncomfortable feeling that so much of it is like pandering to people our age.
Of course it is.
Now?
We are the problem.
Yeah.
We are the problem. I'm not, because I don't watch any of those Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah.
But you people who are my age are the problem.
Yeah, like every time I go past the Enmore Theatre, it's some nostalgia act.
Yeah.
And that's everything from like Montel Jordan to to Grinspoon.
Yeah.
Do you remember Grinspoon?
Of course I remember Grinspoon.
And basically everything between that. Like none of these people have ever died or gone away. I don't know what they've been doing in the last 25 years, but now they're all coming back to the Enmore Theatre.
The good news is it ain't going to be world party anymore. I'll tell you that. So that's one more reason I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Okay, now we've only got 10 minutes left. We've got to stick to this.
Yeah.
So do you want to say something about the RNC chairs?
Yes.
Lara Trump and Michael Watley? Do you want to say anything about that?
So they have come in and they have told hundreds of RNC employees, I think 190 or something like that, they've got to reapply for their jobs.
Yep.
So they're completely cleaning house. Now, this is predictable. This is part of the program of, we want all people who are with the Trump program there.
Yep.
But this is part of the problem that I have been talking about ad nauseum now, which is Trump is actually hollowing out the organizational capacity of the Republican Party.
Yep.
Institutional memory is disappearing. All kinds of professional experience is disappearing. The benefits of ideological diversity are disappearing.
Yep.
Yes, there are benefits to being surrounded by loyalists. You're not going to get any any kind of resistance. People are going to work very hard for you. But also, if no one's going to tell you when you're potentially doing something that your experience tells you is very stupid, that's a problem. When people who can remember how previous political campaigns have actually gone, people who realize that like Trump didn't invent campaigning, that politics didn't begin in 2015, when they're gone, you've just got far less capacity to react to unexpected things. Now, if the polls that show Trump 5 points in front are correct and remain correct, that's not going to matter at all. But if it tightens up to within a couple of percentage points, then the quality of the campaign actually could matter. Now, this is at the level of the RNC. Probably where it matters more, as I've said before, is at the local level, where all kinds of party organisations have been hollowed out. Non-Trump people have been purged or, retired or just got sick of it and left. So the party now is incredibly good at policing out any anti-Trump elements, but pretty inexperienced when it comes to actually fighting election campaigns. And given the money disadvantage that Trump has, maybe he'll be able to make some of that up. Don't know. At the very least, maybe none of this affects Trump's actual election campaign. But this does make it a lot harder for Republicans to win the House.
Yeah.
It means they might not win the Senate by the kind of margin they potentially could win the Senate by.
Yep.
I think it's very hard to see them not winning the Senate. But, this could be the difference between 52 seats and 55.
That's an important difference.
Yeah. That's a very, very important difference.
That may be the difference between holding the Senate in 2 years' time,
exactly,
and holding it for 4 years.
And this is another thing. Like Trump is not going to be around forever. He can be president for another 4 years. I don't think even Republicans in Congress are suicidal enough to push for him to go on some mission to somehow get another term after this, even though I'm sure Trump would want to do that. And sure, he may continue to exercise influence on the party after he's president, but he's going to die at some point. They are really eating their own future here. They are making Trump such the focal point of everything that what they're going to be left with after he's gone is a bunch of people who are good at being loyal to someone who's no longer there and not good at very much else.
I'll tell you what they're doing. What they're doing is they're just doing Barack Obama Mark II. Like, we've been here before. Barack Obama in 2008, he hollowed out the DNC. He started Organising for America. He took a bunch of their functions, the DNC's functions, and gave it to Organising for America. He moved the DNC, moved bits of the DNC to Chicago to be near him in the same way that Trump's moving the RNC now to Florida. He took a bunch of their functions away from them. And then the DNC became really weak. The first thing that happened was they lost the special election in 2010. That was the 60th seat in the Senate.
Massachusetts. They lost Massachusetts.
Yeah, which screwed up everything for the last 6 months or 9 months of Obama's term. Of that 2-year term going into the midterms. And they didn't just lose that, but the DNC became useless for years after. And the results are there to see. I wrote it down. They lost in the Obama years. They lost 11 Senate seats, 62 House seats, 12 governorships, nearly 1,000 seats in state legislatures. Which is the worst effort since Herbert Hoover. When they dragged down the Republican Party. The Republicans also captured 29 separate state chambers and gained 10 state trifectas. I don't think the Democrats have recovered even now.
No.
And that was not entirely, but at least partly because of Barack Obama hollowing out the DNC in exactly the same way that they're hollowing out the RNC now. So they're not learning from history there.
No, they're not.
Just a little aside, I'll defend Lara Trump in one respect, which is the primary thing that the RNC is meant to do is raise money. And Whatley, who is qualified to be there, even though he's a massive flack and a huge Trump sycophant, he's qualified to be the head of the RNC. He was the general counsel for the RNC beforehand. He was the state party leader in North Carolina since 2019. So he's got experience. He's always been a terrible fundraiser. So he is not going to help them raise money.
No.
That's why they need Lara Trump.
Right,
she can use her name. They will raise money. Now, they might just piss it down the sink, the legal sink. But at least they'll raise money to begin with. So she's doing something. She's got a reason to be there. I played this on the show. I don't have the time to play the clips here, unfortunately. But I played on the show her saying that, basically, if you're not on board with the Trump train, then go away. Which is terrible for blue staters. It's terrible for the House because they need those blue staters and they need the blue staters to distance themselves from the House. I played a clip on Wednesday, which unfortunately I don't have the time to play here, of Nancy Pelosi in 2022 when she was asked point blank. If I have the time, I'll put it here, but I don't think I have the time. She was asked point blank, what do you say to the people who are saying you shouldn't be speaker anymore because they were campaigning against her, and she said, just win, baby. That's what you need to say to win. Just win. That's how a pro goes.
I remember that.
And I think that was one of her great quotes. And if Lara Trump is driving people away to not just win, then yes, they'll compromise the House, they'll compromise the Senate. And that's just the short-term issues. The long-term issues are the Obama issues. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, I'm not sure it's a great idea, but surprise, surprise. We are just out of time. So so many things that we need to catch up on. We'll just have to do it some other time. Don't say gay, Bill. We got to talk about that.
Got to talk about that.
Robert Hur, we got to talk about the hearing. We got to talk about. I still haven't talked about Gavin Newsom and the Panera scandal in California. That's like a month old. I'm going to talk about that at some point in time. But to leave you now, I also need to. RFK. I should just say he's now on the ballot. New Hampshire, Hawaii, Utah. He says he's got enough signatures in Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, and South Carolina. And he just gave a speech at the Libertarian Conference, trying to get on the 50 states. They had a straw poll the next day.
Yeah.
He was well received. He goes, straw poll the next day, I have 95 votes. How many do you think he won?
I'll say 35.
One. He won one vote. One vote. I'm not sure if he voted. He won one vote. So he's not looking good for the Libertarian ticket.
No. That was one of the things that kept getting overlooked. Like they've got their own nominating process.
Yeah.
They've got, you can go to Wikipedia and see, they've got full on candidates. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to talk to Eric for the next hour. After the White Flash, there's the last hour of Eric Woolson. We start to an RFK, which is why I bring him up. There is a poll I didn't mention. I forgot to mention this, so I'll mention it now, which is about RFK. It's an echelon poll. 36% of likely voters think RFK Jr. is his father.
Wow.
And that's down from 41% in July. So maybe people, by the time the election comes, won't think that he's his 99-year-old father. Jeez, America, what are you doing? And I finally have to put up the graph, which I left off the last Eric Woolson. I forgot because I did this really late. It's this graph here. You can see it right there, showing that this is the real income growth under Joe Biden. You can see that 6.3% real income growth for the bottom quartile is much more than the other quartiles. It's the kind of growth you like to see. You like to see the poor getting more income growth than the rich. So enjoy that graph. Enjoy Eric. And we will see you next week. Stay peppy. For those who missed the first 3 hours of this conversation, go back to PEP 148. It's a good conversation. I'm here with Eric Woolson, who is a genuine campaign pro. He's worked for just about everyone. And I'm talking to him about what we can expect over the next few months, the pros, the cons, the strengths, the weaknesses, all the ins and outs of the campaign. We've gone through most of it. We've got a little bit left to go, and I'd like to finish off PEP 149 with the last 40 minutes of this conversation, and then that will be it. So the next one thing which we haven't touched, which I personally think might be a big factor, I'm interested in your views, are the third parties, the third party candidates. Because now obviously they're not going to win the election. No matter how much they swear they can win the election, they're not going to. Ross Perot was literally winning the election in July 1992. He was ahead of both Bush and Clinton in the polling in July 1992. He ended up getting 0 electoral college votes. Okay, the third party is not going to win the election, but they could play spoiler if they're in the right states and they have the right result against the right people. They could change the course of the election for someone else. We've talked before about broad polling trends, Eric. When you add third parties into most polls right now, Biden does worse. There have been 19 polls taken from the mid-January to mid-February that included both simple Trump-Biden options and an option where you add 1 to 5 additional candidates. In only 2 of those 19 polls, and they were both state polls, Pennsylvania and Georgia, did Biden's position improve against Trump when extra names were added. In 13 of those polls, Trump's position improved. In the remaining 3 polls, 4 polls, they were tied. They didn't make any difference. Now, that's not a huge surprise to me, given that Trump has such a sticky base of support. You would expect Trump supporters aren't going to be jumping off for anyone, really. His favorable rating, according to the New York Times, is literally identical to what it was 4 years ago. It just hasn't changed. The same people like him, the same people hate him.
There's a ceiling and a floor, and they're about the same. Exactly.
I should also, while I'm setting up this concept, I should just say I suspect the left-wing third parties aren't likely to be an issue, but they'll be interested in your view on this. And I'm referring to Cornel West and Jill Stein because they're not likely to be on, or Cornel West is not likely to be on many ballots. He's only in Alaska at the moment. He doesn't have much money. He's incredibly disorganized. But having said that, if he does manage to get on the ballots, in 5-way general election polls this cycle, so Trump versus Biden versus Kennedy versus Stein versus West, Stein and West polled at about 4 points combined. 4 points might not sound like much. it would be the highest number for left of Democrat candidates in over 100 years, if that came to be. But I'm not expecting them to be on many polls, certainly Cornel West. So I think that will be a non-event. So far, do you agree with me? Do you think the left-wing third-party candidates are likely to be a non-event or not?
Yeah, again, it's that ballot access issue, and we've always had a sort of cynical saying here among political professionals, I guess I'd say, that the third party candidate is a wave of the future and always will be, because every election it's like this is going to happen, and it doesn't, and you made that point. Trump's base is so sticky that if there is, there are other options. It might be those independent voters, those people we talked about, hold your nose and vote for somebody that may just register a protest voter, may go somewhere else. Now, today, the no labels people, who are a centrist group who have talked about, fielding their own candidate, they voted to go forward with a candidate, and they don't have a candidate yet. So they're a cause without a rebel, I guess, at this point. They got to find somebody. A couple other people. I mean, in fact, they had asked Nikki Haley if she would consider running. No, she wouldn't. Dean Phillips said he wouldn't, and so they had this possible centrist, by definition of the others, centrist Nikki Haley, Dean Phillips. That didn't work. Larry Hogan, who had talked about running for president as a Republican, he's running for the U.S. Senate. Yeah. So they haven't been able to find anybody. So, whether they do, you might pick off moderate Republicans that weren't going to hold their nose and weren't going to vote for Trump. Or you might find the soft Democrats who are concerned about Biden's age. So it depends on who their candidate is. Kennedy, that's an interesting. There's an interesting dynamic or conundrum or whatever we want to call that there with him, because voters remember the Kennedy name. They're thinking Democrat. Old voters especially. People my age and older will go, oh, well, and this guy, we have that saying, Buick used to have a ad campaign. This is not your Oldsmobile. This is not your father's Oldsmobile. Yeah. Well, RFK is this is not your father's Kennedy. This guy, he's been an anti-vaxxer. He's been an environmentalist who's kind of cashed in on environmentalism. So it's made the environmentalists mad, but he's still got the reputation among the business that, oh my gosh, we can't trust this guy on the environment. And so there's some nostalgia. He might pick up some nostalgia votes from Democrats, far more likely to pick up Democrat votes than Republicans. And that, again, hurts Biden. That goes back to that point you made about, all these polls show Trump doing better. And the Trump people do want, they welcome those third-party candidates because they know that's going to chip away at what Biden's counting on.
Yeah. I'm going to talk more about RFK in a second, but I just want to go back to no labels, because just to ask you, because you made the point about that they're not being able to get Nikki Haley, and it's not just them. Yep. They couldn't get Joe Manchin. They couldn't get Mitt Romney. They couldn't get Chris Christie. They couldn't get Chris Sununu. They just don't seem to be able to get anyone. But they've got money. They're putting $70 million in ballot access alone. They're already on 16 states. They reckon they're going to be on 33 states by the time they're finished. So they're going to be on ballots. And they have money to spend on ads and promotion, but they just might not have any kind of reasonable candidate. I should also point out that there are sore loser laws in 8 of the states. So someone who actually ran in a different primary can't run in those 8 states. They might not care about that, but that does rule out a bunch of people as well. Are you of the opinion? Let's just say things carry through as they appear to be, which is they end up having stacks of money. They can run ads. Oh, I should also say their messaging is very corrosive towards Biden. They've some of their messaging workshops have been leaked, and there was one that was leaked to CNN where their main messages were that Biden is pushing open borders, and that he wants to abandon Israel, and that he's sympathetic to Hamas. I don't think he'd love those ads, right? So let's say No Labels exists. Yep. It's running these ads with lots of money, but it has the dud candidates. Do you think it can make any impact as a spoiler or not under those circumstances?
I think under those circumstances, it'd be difficult. And, my first inclination, my temptation was to say, No Labels is going to be the Lincoln Project of 2024, where you had a lot of rich consultants come together. We don't like Trump, and they raised a ton of money, and they spent on advertising, and they spent lavishly on hotels and on meals and, all their expenses and rental cars and that, and pocketed a lot of money. And it was a lot of rich consultants getting rich. And, you can have the same situation here where, as you said, they've got a ton of money. They can spend it on ballot access, but the ballot access process is usually one of those consultants getting the contract to do that work. And, you've got to put a little profit in on top of that. Without a serious candidate, I mean, my frustration would be, and my inclination would be that you give the money back. There's a guy that ran for the Senate here in Iowa a couple years ago, and he spent $8 million and lost. And I had a conversation with him afterwards, and he said, well, you're a campaign manager, what would you have done different? And I said, I'd have told you not to spend your money. You're just a candidate that the more people see you, the less they like you. Yeah. And he sort of took offense with that. And he said, well, I'm serious. I said, I am too. And he says, well, people in your business don't tell us not to spend the money. They want the money. And I say, well, I couldn't in good conscience take your money because it was, your message was so fatally flawed. He had moved back to the state, and he was a super wealthy guy who'd moved back to the state, and his whole campaign point was, I have a vacation home in a very rich enclave on a lake in Iowa, and I would come back in the summer to my multi-million-dollar vacation home. So I would say, my point was, you're wasting your money. Well, this is the same thing to the donors of No Labels right now. I wouldn't be giving any money to No Labels if they don't have a viable candidate. Otherwise, they'll blow that $17.5 million or whatever. That's, it's like that old saying, the amount of work expands to fill the number of available briefcases. Yes. The campaign is going to spend what the campaign has. If No Labels had $10 million right now, they'd spend $10 million. In fact, they would probably spend $17 million. I remember years back, McCain's campaign, and we were talking about $1 billion and $2 billion campaigns now. Well, McCain's campaign was saying they were going to raise $50 million. Well, they only raised $30 million, but they spent $50 million. Meanwhile, I was running Mike Huckabee's campaign, and we kept downplaying and downplaying and downplaying. I'd give the governor a budget, and then they'd say, we don't have that much money. And I'd give him another budget. Well, we don't have that much money. And, Huckabee wins on $3 million. And so, the other guys spend $50 million. And, so No Labels is going to spend whatever it is that they have. And I don't know that they'll make any difference whatsoever.
Fair enough. Just a record, it was $70 million on ballot access, not 17.
70.
But still, I take your
point.
Oh my
God.
I know, they got a lot of money.
That money's going to be gone.
Okay,
that'll be gone.
Yeah. Okay, now let's talk RFK. He's currently on the ballot in New Hampshire and Utah. He apparently is qualified for Arizona and Georgia, although that's not official yet. He's focusing apparently on swing states, which Biden will not enjoy. But there was a Mediaite article the other day about his campaign being a complete mess, him having family members involved, and essentially just it's been a grift operation, and them not spending nearly enough money on ballot access, and spending obscene amounts of money on PR. And that just had no consequences whatsoever.
Yeah.
I don't know if how much of that is true or not, but that's the knock. And he's had a whole bunch of campaign turnover. People just dropping out because they say you're going nowhere. But depending on what. Oh, first of all, what's your view on RFK before I tell you some other things?
Yeah. Well, I think as you make that description, it's always campaign. First things first. We got to focus on if we're not on the ballot, doesn't matter. So, you have to have a campaign where you have your priorities in order, and you have to have the right people. I'm not a ballot access lawyer. So, you have to have your ballot access lawyer. You have to have your boots on the ground. In Illinois, for instance, you can end up on the ballot in congressional districts. I think it's Virginia. I take that back. So Virginia, you have to get 10,000 signatures per congressional district.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for an insurgent to get the entire state. You might be on 3 or 4 congressional, you might be running for president in 3 or 4 congressional districts, but different states require different things. Now, other states, I think New Hampshire, for instance, I'm not sure their rules, but it used to be you take $500 in and put your name in, and that's why you'd have 200 people running for president in New Hampshire. Different states have different requirements, and you need somebody. Your family member isn't going to typically be the one who knows what's going on. Kamala Harris's campaign, the reason it fell apart was because her sister was the campaign manager, and her sister wasn't a professional campaign manager. And so, my thought on that is, there's always a battle within campaigns for candidates' time and where to spend the money.
Well,
and they're spending it in the wrong place.
Well, on that note, Kennedy's campaign manager is Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, his daughter-in-law. And she hired her nanny as her chief of staff. So that might be...
There may be some shortcomings there. And, for a dynasty... and Robert Kennedy managed, John's campaign because they liked him because he was ruthless, and he really was ruthless. But I'm suspecting the nanny isn't as ruthless as, RFK was. I haven't run into too many ruthless nannies in my lifetime. But focusing on those states and those swing states. Now, Utah, I know they're on the ballot in Utah. The Republican's going to win that regardless. Biden is not going to win that. That one won't hurt him. Arizona, that will hurt, and it will be because older voters, might have that nostalgia. Georgia, that was a close. Biden won that by 11,000 votes or 15,000 votes or something. That could be another one that, if Trump's already ahead there, and to tilt even farther that's another one that's going to hurt Biden. So it's like, Biden has been very loyal to the Kennedy family over the years, and they've been loyal to him. But again, RFK Jr. is not your typical Kennedy, and it's hard to understand what he thinks he's going to accomplish in this, this futile mission.
I wonder that too. A couple of factors I'm thinking about with RFK is we talked about the advertising. Now, even if it's completely ineffective, the advertising, it's going to be there. And what it might be effective to do is to make people dislike Trump and Biden more, like just both of them. Especially Biden if he's running lots of ads. Because, he's not going to campaign much outside. We know he's limited. So he's going to be wanting to run a campaign, which might make an ugly campaign even uglier. Now, if it's a double haters campaign, like I think it's going to be, with people hating both of them, that really helps the third-party candidate. Like, they're another option, right? And you mentioned the iconography of the Kennedys, like the magic of the Kennedy name. Did you see their Super Bowl ad?
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through? A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do?
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
American Value 2024 is responsible for the contents of this advertisement.
I was going to mention that when you mentioned advertising, you think about spending $5 million and the backlash on that ad. The family was upset because they didn't see that coming. He claimed, RFK Jr. Sent it out as a tweet or an X or whatever, and this was wonderful. And then 30 minutes later, he's disavowing this ad because he didn't know the PAC was going to do it. And I saw it. I was watching the game, of course, and I sadly enough old enough to remember the original ad way back, and there were a number of stories about it being a copycat ad. It wasn't a copycat ad. It was the exact same ad. Yeah. It just put his picture in where JFK's pictures were. And, the point that analysts made here was that people already know the Kennedy name. So why spend $5 million on an ad that does? If it had said RFK wants to raise your household income, or RFK Jr. Is going to protect the environment, or whatever, you'd go, okay, that was an ad with a message. But just to have an ad that goes Kennedy, 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 they already know. Again, how many Americans have never heard the name Kennedy? It's got to be pretty. It's got to be a pretty small number.
It's really interesting to hear that because I was thinking to myself, he's leaning into the iconography here. He's trying to get the nostalgia going, so maybe that's effective. But the point you make is that it's actually a crap ad because it doesn't actually give people anything.
Yeah. And to have the family disavow it immediately, the family came out and said, we're upset that he would even do this. He doesn't stand for what JFK stood for. He doesn't stand what his father stood for. And, to hijack this iconic ad from the 60s for his own use, we're all offended by this.
What I found interesting was his response to them. Like you said, he immediately apologized on Twitter. He apologized. He said, I'm so sorry if the Super Bowl advertisement caused anyone in my family pain. The ad was created and aired by the American Values Super PAC without any involvement or approval from my campaign. FEC rules prohibit Super PACs from consulting with me or my staff. I love you all. God bless you. Which sounds nice, but he left the ad up. He left it up on his Twitter page.
Exactly. Well, and I'll tell you another thing about coordination that's very interesting here because, campaign, there's the Chinese wall between the campaign and the Super PAC. We can't coordinate with each other. But so if I'm the Super PAC, if I make information public, then the campaign can understand what my plan is. I may have a plan or say I'm going to spend $5 million on a Super Bowl ad if I make that public. Well, the definition of public is I can create a website that says my website domain is Chaz loves RFK.
Yeah.
So that's a public website, but how many people know to look for Chaz loves RFK?
Yeah.
But then the campaign knows about it, So we can go there and we can see that information. And so there's not the prohibitions that really keep those sorts of things from happening, which led me to believe that he probably knew about that ad coming up and was sitting in front of his TV eating popcorn, waiting for the ad to show up, because he would have known about it.
Yeah.
So he could say, I didn't have anything to do with it. It's like this F1 controversy right now with Christian Horner, where they're saying that we investigated Christian Horner and the matter has been settled. Okay, well, I've been around long enough to know that doesn't mean that he was innocent and he's been exonerated. It means that there was probably a settlement paid. And so we investigated, and, the matter is closed now. And so you have to know, I've rarely done this, but I had a situation once where I didn't want my guy to be on TV. And so, and it was kind of my boss didn't want actually this person on TV for him. And so I was trying to think, how could I get him off TV without lying to the TV station? And so I did not lie to the TV station. But what happened was, this guy, usually the guy that was going to be on TV, lived out of town. He lived 45 miles away, and he usually got to town about 8:30. Well, I looked at my watch and it was 8:20. So I called the TV station and I said, hey, I just realized my guy's out of town today. Or my guy's out of town right now, is what I said.
Yeah.
My guy's out of town and he can't do the show today. And so I did not lie, because he was out of town for another 10 minutes. But that's the same situation that I suspect you have with Kennedy, where it's like, I didn't have anything to do with this ad.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that he wasn't deeply, informed about the ad.
Yeah.
But I digress once again.
No, that's all right. That's all right. But on that note, the attitude he showed there publicly, I mean, the nice guy apologizing and stuff, I actually think it's an interesting aspect of the threat he poses to Biden, or Trump for that matter, but especially Biden, is that, that's very much his persona. His persona is, I'm a really nice guy, just a normal, decent guy. You see him in interviews. He does a lot of podcasts with comedians, just being a nice guy. And in this environment, this ugly, ugly political environment, his whole campaign is, I'm going to heal America, independent to heal America, which was, if you recall, Biden's campaign in 2020. And, obviously that hasn't worked out for Biden, but, it's in the context of this negativity that's going to be the next 10 months. I could see Kennedy just sitting on the sidelines, just being a nice guy, and people who just hate the political environment just going, well, maybe he can change things. Maybe he will heal America. He seems like a nice guy.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've been talking about cutting into Biden most likely, or cutting into Trump. What I've done as a campaign manager a lot of times, and I certainly didn't come up with a phrase myself, but it's expanding the universe. If you expect that there's going to be 5,000 voters in a campaign, how can I go out and find 500 more voters that normally don't vote? That, okay, maybe they like this guy not because he's a Republican, but because he's a golf pro. And let's, mobilize every golfer in the city to vote for this guy because they like him because he's a golfer. Or, maybe she's a teacher and normally they're not going to vote in a House race, but we get them to do this. So as we've talked about cutting into Biden, it could be that he expands the universe. He makes the pie bigger. And so while he takes some votes away from Biden, maybe he brings new people into the vote total in November that wouldn't have voted. And so then that way, does it hurt Trump or does it hurt Biden? Not as much. But I think ultimately he hurts Biden more than he hurts Trump.
Okay. Given that we got about 20 minutes left, let's use that to just cover just broadly.
You want this to be a lightning round? You want me short answers, lightning round?
There's nothing lightning round, but let's just pick the things rather than us going bit by bit. Let's just go broadly. Okay. I'll just give you a bunch of topics, and you talk about whichever one you want to talk about. Okay. So if we think about like the strengths and the advantages for the Democrats, the advantages for the Republicans. Okay. So in terms of advantages for Democrats, it's obviously abortion is a big one. The democracy thing is a big one, like Trump being a threat to democracy. The Trump says lots of crazy shit. They're going to be running endless ads of crazy things that Trump has said. They would bring, and also Trump legal stuff, like the trials and stuff. Those are, I suppose, the main positives for the Democrats. Now, which of those interest you? Which of those things do you want to talk about?
Oh gosh, I suppose all of them. Where you think when you're talking about trying to sell the the ads with all the crazy stuff that Trump says. Again, we go back to in elections past, you might have had 30% on each side, and so you're battling for that 40% in the middle. This time around for the electorate, not the total voters, but say the people that are going to turn out. You might be fighting for that 10% slice of people who've made up their minds. So yeah, the Democrats are going to be saying, okay, how crazy Trump is. Trump is going to be, if he comes up with the money, has the money, going to be saying everything's a mess. And you've got to bring me back because Biden is so incompetent. Obviously, age is going to be part of that issue. Things that you wouldn't have dreamt of talking about in years past. I think everything's on the table. Now, does that cut both ways? We had our election here in Iowa with Senator Grassley. Who's 90 years old now. Well, he was just reelected at 88, and he's going to be kicking 95 if he makes it to the end of his term. But the interesting thing on age, and you've talked about the polling on the age numbers with Biden and people thinking he's too old. It's obviously it's a lot of the older voters that are most concerned about the age. I remember my dad passed away a couple of years ago, but he would always say why are these old people staying around? I know I couldn't keep up with this job. How are they keeping up? Why are they still clinging to power? So the question's going to be on the age issue and on the advertising for that. Who's going to be most affected by that? I suspect that some older voters are going to be moved by that more than the young voters are, and they tend to turn out more often, of course, older voters than young voters. On the other side, two-edged sword, there could be old people that are going to say, I'm really offended by Trump's people attacking Biden on his age. But I think overall the age issue is going to cut against Biden.
I just want to add a couple of things on age because that is an area where I probably should spend a bit more time. Firstly, I've noticed with the polls that increasingly over time, everyone thinks he's too old. When I say everyone, I mean including Biden supporters. And what that means is, if like you take the New York Times poll the other day, it was 73% of voters said he was too old to be effective. 59% of Biden supporters said he was too old to be effective. So if you get to a point where everyone agrees he's too old to be effective, that means it's not an election issue anymore. Like it's not stopping people voting for him. Even the people who are voting for him are saying he's too old. It becomes like Trump's crazy. A lot of Republicans say, Trump's crazy, but I'm voting for him. I don't care anymore. I'm used to it. It's baked in. And I feel like we're almost getting to the point with age where that's baked in as well. But people go, he's too old, but whatever. I'm voting for him anyway. So I wonder if it's losing salience as an election issue in itself. But
I think the danger he has is if where they make jokes about it. When they start laughing at you, then you're in big trouble. It's one thing to go, gosh, I'm concerned the guy's too old. But if he does something where people are laughing at him, that's the thing that Trump is so good about is, get them ridiculing your opponent. He's calling him Sleepy Joe right now, and that really hasn't. That's not got the hook. He's not quite there with the insult. He found that low energy Jeb Bush. He found all these different nicknames to insult these people, and Crooked Joe, Sleepy Joe. But if something happens where you get voters laughing at the president, that's the kiss of death.
Okay, all right, we'll look out for that. I was going to say, I think age could be more of an indirect issue than a direct issue. In that age might feed into him not getting the credit for the economy, for instess. People are just thinking, the economy's doing well, but not because of that old fool. He's too incompetent to be. He's just lucky. Or maybe age leads to him not getting out there, not campaigning as much because they're worried about him having gaffes, which makes him less effective as an advocate. And it's the poor advocacy that's the issue, more than the actual age itself. I don't know. I would just great
points. Yeah, and the irony of a 77-year-old saying that an 81-year-old is too old, is remarkable. Somebody said they were stepping down from. I know somebody stepped down from a federal post here last week. The guy was 74, and he said, "I'm too old for the job, and I'm too young to be president." So he's stepping down from the job. But there's sort of this catch-22 with the, Trump says so much crazy stuff that, as you say, it's baked in where you just go, that's who Trump is. Well, Biden, because they're trying to keep him wrapped up, when he has a gaffe, it gets magnified because, he hasn't been out saying as much stuff. The irony is, they used to talk about how loquacious Joe Biden was just a polite word for run his mouth too much. But this is the irony of locking the guy up. We go back to when I worked for him, and I remember there was a Wall Street Journal reporter that was there. We were in the car. There was a driver. There was Senator Biden, the Wall Street Journal reporter, and me. And we had a 45-minute drive, and the Wall Street Journal reporter was going to spend that time interviewing Biden. So he starts out with his first question: Senator, you have a reputation for talking too much, and sometimes that gets you into trouble. What do you say about the people who say you run your mouth too much? Stupidest question to open a 45-minute interview with, I can tell you that. He says, so do you think you talk too much? And Biden said no. And then there was
that's great.
And so then he says, well, would you like to elaborate on that? No. Okay, Senator. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. But Biden's a guy that always, his whole reputation was talk. And he made mistakes, but again, it was almost like Trump, where if you're talking enough, you sort of glide over the mistakes. Now he's in real danger because everybody, every time he says something wrong, he's going to catch hell for it. Yeah. And Biden's people are trying to change this narrative, and I think they're right, because they say, the press is unfair to Biden at this point because they've gotten so used to Trump's craziness and to fact-checking the guy. The guy told 20,000 lies when he was in the White House or something. And, I mean, seriously, that is the number the Washington Post fact-check said. The president told 20,000 and some lies. But they say, look, you guys are so accustomed to Trump saying, nonsense all the time that you don't hold him accountable. And so it's unfair to hold Biden accountable. So we've started to see a little bit more coverage again that we had maybe years back of Trump said this and it was a flat out lie, or Trump said this and it was flat out wrong or something. And so that's how they're going to have to find a way to change that narrative. And I don't know if they have to have Joe Biden, challenge Trump to a push-up contest on the White House lawn or something like that. But he's going to have to show some way, and I think he would win, actually. He's the lean and, unless he's got no upper body strength, but he ought to be able to beat Trump. They're going to have to find some way to, again, make Trump the joke and the butt of the joke, and Biden the serious guy.
That's really interesting. The other one other thought about the age thing before we move off that, which is that I think what this does do, the age thing, once again, it's an indirect effect, is it activates Kamala Harris, who is so unpopular. It potentially makes the election a lot more about her than it otherwise would be. And as an aside, I think that they've done a good job with Kamala Harris in the last couple of weeks. I've noticed that they've trotted her out as their abortion spokesperson, which I think is a very good idea, because not only can she be, obviously she's a woman, and it's an issue about women's rights, but on top of that, she can be their empathetic enforcer in a way that you can't really go wrong. It's a really easy job. They've given her hard jobs before, like control the border. Try and get Republicans to vote for voting rights legislation. That's hard, right? But getting her just to kick people about IVF, that's easy to do, right? And they've trotted her out to do that. Also, I noticed they trotted her out to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, which is easy for a Democrat to do, and it allows Joe Biden to have a little bit of distance so he can be the diplomat. And it allows Kamala Harris to get some easy brownie points amongst Democrats to help her popularity. So I suspect Trump might make her part of this election campaign because of the age thing. They relate together.
Well, and it especially helps in the swing state of Michigan, where it's the largest Arab population in the U.S. Is in that swing state of Michigan. And so I would expect, or if I were running that campaign, I would have her up there a lot, because she can say those sorts of things and get away with it. There was a prominent political scientist over here that told Newsweek that her popularity could end up being the difference maker in 2024. And as you noted, she's she's underwater, 17 points underwater on approval, disapproval. And that's the lowest of any sitting vice president. I mean, it really a big problem. And part of it is of her own doing. They didn't bring on the right staff the first time around. I mentioned her sister managing one of the campaigns. She has a reputation for being difficult, which the Democrats say isn't true. But she's did a lot of staff turnover. But I got to say, on a personal note, she brought in a consultant about a year ago. Well, an advisor. I shouldn't say consultant, but she brought an advisor about a year ago, and that person became her chief of staff. And her name is Lorraine Voles. And Lorraine, years back, worked for Senator Tom Harkin here in Iowa. She worked a couple of presidential campaigns. She worked the Mondale campaign. She worked the Dukakis campaign. So she's got that presidential experience. She was the director of communications for your hero, Al Gore, when he was vice president. So she served for Al Gore. She worked for the DNC. She was a director of communications for Hillary Clinton. So she's somebody who really knows her stuff, and she's been around, this business 30 plus years, for almost 40 years. And so she really knows her stuff, actually 40 years, And I think that's going to help, especially coming into this election cycle too. So it really matters for these elected people who they surround themselves with. If you have a a clown like me, you're a couple months lifespan, and that's about it. And if you got the right goals, you might have another 4 years in the White House.
Talking about Michigan, you brought up Michigan. This is obviously another big issue as well. The youth vote in general, the Muslim vote related to Gaza. Who knows what's going to happen with this war? But I find it hard to believe that they can keep it up going at the same rate for more than a few more months. I think Rafah is about it. So let's say it wraps up. At least this phase wraps up in May or June. Is that ancient history by the election? No problems, or has he got a problem in Michigan and he's got a problem with the kids?
Could be in the rearview mirror by then. As I said earlier, that old saying, 24 hours is a lifetime in politics. And it depends on how they go about things with the foreign policy, what they're doing. I mean, the aid to Gaza, I think, has got to help in some sense. Now, the condition of the state, or the State of the Union speech, there were Muslim members who were holding up small signs saying "Stop sending bombs to Israel," and there was some of that. But I think it depends on where they go from here. I think you're right. The war can't go on. The resources aren't really there, and I think sending in aid, it's the right thing to do from a humanity standpoint, but political standpoint, it's also smart. But again, I like to think that if I were running that operation, where you would deploy Harris would be up there in Michigan and try to mend those fences.
Yeah. One other thing, we mentioned the crazy shit Trump says angle. I was wondering, my take on that is that Hillary tried that in 2016 and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And that was in 2016 when he didn't have the advantages of a pseudo incumbent. It's one thing to say, this person says crazy things. They could do anything. They're capable of anything. After being president for 4 years, I don't think it has the same effect. So even though they seem to be doing this, I'm not sure it's a great idea. I'm not sure it's going to be effective. Do you have a view about that?
Yeah, I think, voters are numb to it. To your point earlier that, look, they're used to it. That's what they expected. And as far as his base goes, it's always been a ratcheting up kind of a thing. Once you talk crazy, you got to talk crazier and crazier to get attention. And he knows a lot of it that he's done these, made these statements. It's very well timed. It's calculated to he understands the media better than anybody, I think. And I rarely have compliments, but that's a compliment where he knows that if there's a big story right now, all I have to do is say, "Oh, fire in the theater," and everybody rushes to write about the fire in the theater, even if it didn't happen. And so, I think by now, if we spend $30 million, we see $30 million being spent on TV saying that Trump says crazy stuff. Everybody's just going to go, yeah, we know it. Biden has got to sell his vision for the future. Again, as we talked about, elections are about the future and what are you going to do for me? And Biden's got to sell that, and that's a harder sell for him with the skepticism that exists right now.
Yeah. A weakness for Republicans that we haven't mentioned so far, which we probably should at least mention, is the trials, the legal stuff. I am of the view that, my training is actually, I've got a law degree, I'm interested in legal stuff. I'm certain that there is not going to be any trials of any note before the election. So my question to you is, if Trump is not convicted in a trial, are they relevant? Like if they're just hovering over, if there's just clouds hovering over there's the threat of some time down the road. Does that matter at all? Does that play a factor? Does that play a role in this election? Or do you need an actual trial with an actual conviction to hurt Trump?
Well, we've talked about polls a lot, and the polls that we're seeing are how much of Trump's vote does he lose if he's convicted? And that's a moot point because, as you said, there are not going to be trials. They've done an excellent job of delaying the trials. That's been their tactic all along. The Supreme Court helped them along immensely, and so there are not going to be any trials before the election. And so I don't think that'll influence the outcome at all. And you know, his hope, of course, is that when he's elected, he can just tell the Department of Justice, cancel all these federal charges against me, and we'll see how obviously how that goes. But I think you've hit the nail on the head that there's just not there's not going to be anything. There's a lot of smoke, but there's no fire there.
Yeah. And just for the record, just so people aren't confused, I'm aware that the Stormy Daniels case will go to trial, but I'm not counting that because he's not going to be found. I mean, that's legally very dubious. I don't think it's going to be effective. That's not the trials we're talking.
Civil. Yeah. Or is it criminal? No, there is.
They're trying to make it. I don't want to waste your time, but they're trying to make it criminal by taking a very novel legal approach to try to create a criminal charge. It's not going to work. But, you know, whatever. So don't worry about that one.
In fact, I just saw a story on that today, last point on that, that is a trial Trump really doesn't want to have happen because of the salacious sort of details. The prosecutors are now trying to bring in a couple other payments that he made to kind of prove that he's got a record of doing this. So it's not just this one instance, and they're trying to bring in other extramarital affairs and things like that. And so he's really trying to fight that. But again, that's not the criminal convictions to the level of those other cases. So
no, it's not. And another issue which we've just brushed past, which is obviously for the Democrats the biggest issue of all, is abortion. That's clearly going to be their main advertising campaign. They've got Trump on toast as far as him saying, "I am the one who did this." I am the one responsible for Roe versus Wade being overturned. I'll just race through very, very quickly just a couple of thoughts, Evan, and get your thoughts on the abortion thing. I think it's a very strong issue for the Democrats for the following reasons. Number one, it's bipartisan. Like, there are very few issues that Republicans agree with, and in any poll, there's always at least a third of Republicans who are on board for abortion rights. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's about freedom. And I think in America, freedom has a very powerful grip on the American psyche. Like when you can wrap yourself in the flag and say we're all about freedom, that's a strong advertising campaign. It's about loss aversion. Like it's a lot more effective when you're saying to people, you have a right, they're trying to take away than trying to go for something. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and rather than trying to take it away, basically are taking it away, have taken it away. The states, the thing I found so interesting about that issue is that, the Republicans have fought for 50 years to have the issue go back to the states. Yeah. And then within 2 weeks, they're saying we need a national abortion ban. Yeah. So, which is it? And again, it's in some sense, I wouldn't question the integrity of everyone, but to some sense, it's about, again, raising money. How do we take this issue as a wedge and use it to raise money? And so you're going to see a lot of that from both sides, obviously. But yeah, I think in this case, you do have the people with cultural issues that are motivated by abortion on the right, on the conservative side. But again, I think you're going to have more people that tend to be motivated because they see it as a right being taken away from them, and they have to fight to keep that.
Yeah. I think it's also a classic slippery slope issue where you go, not only, like, even if they've already taken away abortion in a red state, they go, yeah, and they're coming back for more. They're coming back for contraception.
Yes.
They're coming back. Like, there's always more that they're coming back for. So that's an effective advertising campaign. I think it's
Another
also...
one. And then you've seen the IVF issue this week pop up, where all of a sudden people there was no mention of IVF. And then all of a sudden the Alabama Supreme Court says, well, wait a minute, a frozen embryo is a life.
Yeah.
And so if you unfreeze the embryo and don't use it, you've killed a baby.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden, even on the Republican side, they're like, whoa, holy moly, we didn't think of that. And you've got Republicans that are saying, wait a minute, we oppose penalties for, we want to allow IVF to happen. So that slippery slope sometimes gets more slippery than the people on it expect.
Yeah, yeah. And then you also look at who's this affect. This affects women. Women vote more than men. Where there are more women than men and they vote more. And I'll tell you who else it affects. It affects people who have daughters, who are 50-somethings, who are the people who vote most of all. And so,
who want grandchildren. Yeah.
That's right.
Someone's daughter can't have children and they're going to use IVF. And now all of a sudden, wait a minute, the Republicans have said we can't do that. That'll change some minds.
Yeah. And then most of all, this is the most important thing of all, I think, for an advertising campaign, which is why I think it's such a killer issue for Democrats. There is going to be a constant stream of examples ripped out of the news for the next 6 months of red states overreaching over and over and over again. There will be 15 celebrity women over the next 6 months who had something horrible happen to them, who are going to be the prime news story of their day, illustrating that it's still going. And it's becoming worse and worse and worse. And they can build each campaign around each news story, which is what Trump's trying to do with immigration, with migrant crime. But that's not going to be nearly as effective, I think, as the abortion examples. So what are your thoughts about all that?
Exactly. And we've seen news stories here in the U.S. about women in Texas who, had health problems. They had to have an abortion to save their life, and sorry, you can't get that here in Texas. And so, we're already seeing not only the ads that are going to be coming, but the news stories are already happening, and that's going to ratchet up as well.
Yeah. You mentioned before about, this is, I think, it had to be our final topic. We're just about running out of time. You mentioned before the, we've covered a lot of ground about immigration. Let's just end on that one, because this is the one that Trump wants to be the issue. My view on immigration is that sometimes it polls it polls very highly as an issue that people care about. But usually doesn't last for long. It's usually for a few weeks and then drops off the map a bit. Right now, it's right up there in terms of issue polling. But we know that what happens in every summer, the number of border crossers go down. And that will happen again this summer. Like, that just happens every year. We also know that if you bribe the Mexican president, he will reduce the numbers for you. This is what happened in the last month when they bribed AMLO. The numbers went down. So I'm sure Joe Biden knows that. They'll be bribing him in October. You can be sure about that. Also, another thing is that Trump's tried to make this an issue before. In 2022, he tried to make this an issue and it didn't seem to have any effect. So, and I can't remember an election which actually revolved around immigration. Like, the issues did, but I can't remember a time when someone won an election because of immigration. But I might be wrong about that. You're the pro. You tell me. How effective do you think this might be as an issue?
It's as you were talking about that, I got to thinking about the October surprise, where the campaigns always worry, what's the October surprise going to be? And so if I'm Biden, what if somebody who came across the border last year launches a terrorist attack in October?
That's an October surprise, all right. Yeah.
There's an October surprise. And so what if we have a domestic terror attack? Or if I'm Trump, the October surprise maybe nobody came across the border. Okay, this problem is fixed. But we've always had, dating back to, I can't remember how long. I remember the famous October surprise, of course, was, the Reagan campaign was worried whether the Iranians would release the U.S. hostages before the election, because that was his big issue. And of course, they didn't, and Jimmy Carter lost that election. But it will come down to, is there maybe an October surprise related to immigration? But I think that's an issue that's got some legs, because I think that, in this last year plus, the number of people coming across that border has been huge. And I think that October surprise, maybe it's not something to do with terrorists, but maybe it's something to do with Mexican gangs. Yeah. And what if something happens with the gangs control, the cities on the Mexican side? What if all of a sudden they come across in El Paso and they shoot up El Paso or McAllen or someplace like that? So the border's going to be, something to keep an eye on.
That's a fair point. Even if it's not, even if it doesn't have legs to go all the way for the next 6 months, it just takes one flare up at the wrong time, and then that's fair enough. Honestly, Eric, I can't believe that you survived 4 hours.
You're the one that didn't get any sleep, and I've been worried about you. That's it's like, okay, how much longer can he hold on?
Well, it's 2 p.m. now, and I am going to go sleep straight after this, I have to say.
A nap's a great idea.
Yeah. But you are the Iron Man of PEP, Eric. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Happy to do it. Happy to do it anytime.
Oh, wow. Well, look, I will take up on that. Next time, I'm not going to hold you for 4 hours, but we should definitely talk to you again during this campaign to see how we check in and get some more insights. Thank you so much, Eric.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Stay peppy.
Bye-bye.